Piper James, technically deceiver. Your life to millions, your why we lose. Piper James, great deceiver. You're living in delusion and you're why we lose. James Lindsay spinning tails, got a fantasy in play, pocketing that cash while he's leading minds astray. Milfs for liberty, he's cashing in the bucks, but his logic's out of whack, man, it's all just muck. Left hates capitalism, he's blind to the facts. Queer theories misunderstood, it's a different attack. Destabilizing norms, breaking down the walls, but James blocks the truth, man, he's lost in the halls. Piper James, great deceiver. Your lies are weak, we're calling out the truth. Piper James, great deceiver. You steal from us, yet you're still deluded. Echo chamber stick, it's a bubble of deceit. While he's pocketing the green, we're exposing the cheat. Leonardi drops the mask with a bang. Where liberation means capitalism that's the goal. Stop blocking the truth, James, open up your eyes. Our theories misunderstood, capitalism's a pride. Destroying the old norms, shaking up the scene. Face up to reality, stop the serial line. James, great deceiver. Your lies are weak, we're calling out the truth. Piper James, great deceiver. You steal from us, yet you're still deluded. Echo chamber stick, up the limit. Whiteness, capitalism, it's all intertwined. Queer theories, the lens, but you're way behind. Liberation means capitalism's gone. The lies will cost us the war, that's the price. No property, no house, no business, no money, no parents, no rights, no life for us all. Socialist reality built on your lies. Piper James, great deceiver. Parents follow your advice, kids pay the price. Piper James, great deceiver. You hold up the curtain to cover the mess you've begun. Piper James, great deceiver. Your life to millions, you're why we lose. Piper James, great deceiver. You're living in delusion and you're why we lose.
That Adolf Hitler made that he records for himself in the first chapters of Mein Kampf, which I have bothered to read more than once. Not in the, I don't speak German, so I didn't read it in German, but I have read it, and he's very clear that he's fighting with the Marxists. He's fighting with the Marxists. He's fighting with the Marxists. He can't stand the Marxists. You argue with them, they lie. The Marxist press prints nothing but lies, and the rest of the media goes along. He yells at them till his voice goes hoarse, drinks his bottle of milk, and comes back and yells at them some more. He's got all these rants about the Marxists. And then he says that one day he finally realized something interesting about them. All the Marxists, all the Social Democrats, which is what the Bolsheviks called their party, was the Social Democrat Party, all of them were Jewish.
Wow. James is sounding like quite a Holocaust denier in that clip, isn't he? Isn't that clip interesting? That clip was so interesting that after I put it on Twitter yesterday, it has like 130,000 views. And I'll tell you what, James has been losing his shit on Twitter all day long. And it's actually been quite a sight to see. If you've been following me on Twitter today, I have been documenting this. And listen, we were supposed to do this was supposed to be Queer Marxism Week. And it got hijacked because I just can't get this out of my head. I'm like, what is going on with all of a sudden these major influencers pushing this woke right narrative? And I'm just like, and we're gonna look at some of James losing his shit on Twitter, but like, it was Queer Marxism Week, and now it's turned into Gnostic Sex Cult Week. Exactly. Because here's the thing, James is basically saying that Tucker Carlson is on the woke right because of this interview that came out a couple weeks ago, and now James is saying, and he literally did say this, anyone that associates with Tucker Carlson is also on the woke right. Anyone who doesn't denounce Tucker Carlson is on the woke right, because Tucker Carlson is the king of the woke right. And everyone else, to include, obviously Nick Fuentes is on the woke right. Glenn Greenwald is on the woke right because Nick Fuentes was on Glenn Greenwald's show getting interviewed with Michael Tracy. Jake Shields is on the woke right. Candace Owens is on the woke right. And literally anyone that interacts with Tucker Carlson at all and does not denounce him is on the woke right. And everyone is persecuting James. James is, I need to turn down my volume. My volume was way loud. I apologize for that. James is the ultimate victim in this situation. And everyone is persecuting him. And James even said people are trying to extort him because he's going on and on and on and on and on and on and on about this interview. So I was going to watch something else today, and oh wait, no, Human Centipede, I'm pretty sure they think RFK is on the woke right too, because in that clip with that Jewish woman that you commented on earlier, they mentioned the health freedom people that recently joined the right, and so I'm pretty sure they're saying RFK is on the woke right as well. And so I'm gonna be honest. Like even Benjamin Boyce is getting struggle sessioned by James. And I kind of wonder how Benjamin Boyce feels about this, if I'm honest about it, because like Benjamin Boyce has always been very cordial. I mean, Benjamin Boyce is always just very cordial in general. He has had James on his show many times, and now James is trying to struggle session Benjamin Boyce, because Benjamin Boyce is basically being like, James, this doesn't make sense. Like and Benjamin Boyce did this whole post this morning where he was talking about the woke center, and the purpose of it was to demonstrate that literally the attributes that they're saying apply to the woke right can apply to anyone. No, RFK is absolutely woke. Are you kidding me? RFK believes in affirmative action. RFK wants to take away our guns. RFK is absolutely woke. That's just like anyone who has tuned into anything that RFK has actually said understands that. But that is a different discussion for a different day. What I want to do today is we're going to watch something else, but like I have to know what's in this interview. I have to, I didn't even care about this interview, and people might be surprised about that because I'm kind of going on this little journey where I'm questioning World War II and everything around that time period and other things as well. But like, I didn't even watch this interview because, quite frankly, Tucker Carlson doesn't actually interest me that much. Honestly, like I know some people really revere Tucker Carlson, and I'm kind of like, I mean, I don't dislike the guy, but I'm also just like, it just seems like played out, and like, I'm just not interested. I don't usually sit through long form interviews like that unless we're watching it for a reason. And so I didn't even watch it. I kind of heard about what was in it, but now that everyone is screaming about how Tucker Carlson is on the woke right, I'm like, what the fuck happened in this interview? Like, seriously. What happened in this interview to make all of a sudden everyone say that Tucker Carlson is woke because he interviewed this guy? And so it's Friday. It's happy hour. I've got some alcohol that I'm going to be telling you about in a second, and we're going to watch this interview. But before we get into that, I have another special treat for people. Because, well, first of all, we're going to look at James's Twitter feed, but also a little birdie flew into my DMs today, and they pointed out to me that James posted, and this is just 10 minutes long, a podcast last week, Don't Trust Woke Language. Now, we caught James just last week Did I put this clip in here? Hang on, let me see if I put the clip in here. No, I didn't put the clip in here. We caught James just last week giving a speech to Moms for Liberty last month where he said, I've always been telling people how to learn how to speak leftist. And I was like, that's really interesting, James, because that kind of sounds like you've been always telling people to learn how to speak socialist, which is a class that I've been running for a year. So where did you get that idea, James? What does that actually mean? And I did hear tell that James did talk about capitalism in this. So we got a couple things we want to do. I want to take you all through a tour of James Lindsay's Twitter feed. I want to show you the epic woke right meltdown that is happening right now on James Lindsay's Twitter feed. And listen, like, you can, we're going to look at the primary source receipts. I didn't force James to write any of these tweets. I didn't force James to act like an insane person. That didn't come from me. I'm just showing you what's going on. And then I want to listen to this, and I want to see what he said about woke language. And then we're going to watch this Tucker Carlson interview with this historian, and we're going to find out what it says. Because I need to know. We believe in watching the full context on this channel. We don't dick around with clips. There are things that are cut out of context. We watch the whole thing, because anytime a clip is cut out of context, there's just danger that it doesn't actually say the thing that the person said. We know that enough now. We have enough experience with this. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to do. Did anyone catch Logan Lansing's interview with Jordan Peterson? He actually opened with Logan Lansing stole my fucking line. I hate all these people. I hate all these people so much. They are liars and deceivers, and they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And yeah, Logan Lansing's been talking about it a lot lately. And yeah. Can I play the clip from Nick last night about the woke right? Yeah, we can play that clip. Yeah, we can. Hang on. So I sent in Nick a super chat last night, and I was like, Nick, what do you think about all this? And I'm not going to play the whole answer he gave to the super chat, but I do have a clip of it. Wait, he had a PowerPoint slide with it on there? Like, are you saying Logan Lansing has a PowerPoint slide with my line in it? Of course he does. Of course, another guy still, yep. Yeah, here we go. Carlin needs to send James a bill for all the shit he's starting to steal from her. I mean, this isn't starting to steal. He's been stealing shit from me for a long ass time. So Nick Fuentes did have her. Look at that tattoo. Isn't that tattoo just like ridiculously good? Anyway, don't pay no attention to the female ass on my screen. It's not about the ass. That's actually just a really nice tattoo. Let me see. Okay, so here is Nick Fuentes' response to James Lindsay calling him woke right.
James Lindsay is a pro-gay atheist. But the Catholics are woke? But the traditional Catholics who criticize Israel on the basis of, one, the strategic interest of the United States, but also humanitarian considerations, we're woke? You're a pro-gay, pro-feminist, pro-diversity atheist, but we're the woke right. But we, the traditional Christians in favor of marriage, that believe in God, that believe in one man and woman, that believe in borders, that believe in no diversity, but we're woke. Okay. Well, who's...
Yeah, and so Nick is basically incredulous about the whole thing. And so how did this come up? I sent Nick a super chat, and I said, Nick, what do you think about James Lindsay and Konstantin Kisin calling you the woke right? And he went on a whole rant. So you can watch the full super chat on Nick's show last night. But I really was actually interested to see what Nick said about this. And listen, like, here's the thing, is like, I really do believe this is a concerted campaign. It's really fishy to me. Like, this isn't just throwing around the term woke right, which has been thrown around for a long time. This is, they've actually come up with a list of criteria and a list of talking points. In fact, let me show you guys this, because this is actually crazy. So this is on my Twitter feed as well. So Konstantin Kisin wrote an article about the woke right that he put in his Substack. And in that article that he wrote, he actually has a list of criteria for what makes you be on the woke right. But no. No, first of all, no, he's not. Second of all, no insulting Nick Fuentes in my chat. Not like this. If you have intellectual criticisms with what Nick has to say, that's fine. But we're not doing this shit in my chat. There is a no shit posting rule, and I'm extending that over to Nick. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about your fucking feelings about someone that you probably have never even listened to. So you're getting a timeout for right now. If you keep doing this shit in my chat, you're going to get banned. Anyway, I just want to show you guys this one thing. So this was behind the paywall on Konstantin Kissin's website. And look at one of the definitions of woke right. Oh, James. Okay, well, we're going to look at James's Twitter feed. Oh, he just posted this? Okay, check this out. Check this out. They say the woke right logic. You can't believe in anything you are being told. Look at how they lie to you about Trump. True. COVID. True. And Biden winning the 2020 election. What that means is that Konstantin Kissin and well, okay, James posted something different. What this means is that Konstantin Kissin is saying that anyone who believes that the 2020 election was stolen is on the woke right. That's what that means. Anyone who believes that the 2020 election is stolen is on the woke right, according to Konstantin Kissin. Does that seem odd to anyone? That kind of seems odd to me. So I do want to just take a little gander through James's Twitter feed. And I have it up right here. Now, I, of course, am blocked on James's Twitter, so I have to look at this in a different window. Yeah, it is disturbing how Nick's detractors keep obsessing over the sexuality of a 26-year-old virgin. Like, why do people care? Why do people care? Makes no sense to me. Let's see what James has been tweeting today. And again, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just showing you what's what. Let's go in. Let's look at the replies, too, because sometimes the replies say interesting things. He's going to be tweeting a lot of stuff, so we're going to scroll through till we find something interesting, okay? Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here is James's new infographic. The woke left believes everything is secretly controlled by white people. The woke right believes everything is secretly controlled by Jews. The woke left claims all history is suspect, and that objective truth does not exist, only power. Claims all history is suspect and that objective truth does not exist, only power. No, actually, that's not true, James. That's not true at all. The right does actually believe that objective truth exists. They just believe that we've all been lied to. The left, criticism of any of their ideas is called gatekeeping. On the right, criticism of any of their ideas is called gatekeeping. I mean, it's not just criticism. It's you guys blacklisting people for their ideas and trying to struggle session and cancel them. Opposing classical liberalism in the U.S. Constitution opposes classical liberalism in the U.S. Constitution. The reason I oppose classical liberalism is, first of all, it's bullshit. Secondly, classical liberalism is going to lead to the left winning. Classical liberalism is just like, is rolling over and allowing the left to win. I hope people understand that. The left says they're quick to call people oppressors. They're quick to call people traitors. Yeah, okay. At the beginning of the movement, we are told they aren't a thing. At the beginning of the movement, we're told they aren't a thing. So this is James's brilliant analysis of why anyone who interviews a historian that James disagrees with is on the woke right. Because again, remember, Tucker Carlson isn't out saying any of this stuff. Literally all Tucker Carlson did to bring the ire of James and Konstantin Kissin and whoever, and Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee and Colin Wright, who claims to be anti-woke but really likes participating in struggle sessions. All that Tucker Carlson did was interview a historian that they don't like. Tucker Carlson isn't out there talking about the Jews. Tucker Carlson isn't out there accusing anyone of gatekeeping. Tucker Carlson doesn't have to. He has his own network. Tucker Carlson isn't out there opposing classical liberalism. Tucker Carlson isn't... Look at this. Why are you defending Tucker? How much did he pay you? Are you retarded? This is, I swear to God, no. Go away. No. 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 We are not going to that level of retardia in the chat. No. No. So let's see what else is in James's Twitter feed. Just for funsies. Oh, he's tweeting other things. Okay, let me see. I'll show you guys. Okay, let's see. Oh, he's defending Gnosticism, of course. Defending Gnosticism. We'll get back to that later. He's arguing with someone about Gnosticism. There is no woke right. We are not Marxists. Marxism is a left-wing ideology. James responds, yes, fascism is a left-wing ideology. I agree. Again, he's calling anyone that questions World War II a left-wing Marxist. Retire the term woke right. And James is saying at the start of every campaign, the campaign claims that it's not true. It's talking about critical race theory. That's not important to us right now. What's this? I didn't see this. There's a hidden truth about ourselves as a people that illegitimate powers have kept from us, and knowing it will help us liberate us from oppression. That's the common thread of the woke left and the woke right. Oh my God. James? He's calling the woke right social Gnostics. Hang on, I gotta get a screenshot of this. James is calling Tucker Carlson a social Gnostic. Bruh. I keep going down. Lay off Tucker. I'll stop when he does. Tucker Carlson is on a tour around the country right now. Well, yeah, I'm actually pretty sure that I was the first to use the term woke right. I started using it in early 2021. I started using it in January of 2021. I wasn't using it like James is using it, but I'm pretty sure I was actually the first one to use it. If someone used it earlier, like, let me know, but I'm the first person that I know of that used it. And I took a round of shit for using it too. Why should we care who he platforms? That sounds like an erroneous claim the wokes and communists make. I find it absurd when Tucker claims Daryl Cooper. Daryl Cooper is the historian we're going to be watching today, is the only honest World War II historian, or when he, to use Tucker's world, sniffs the throne of cretins like Andrew Tate. And James says, so we care who he platforms because he's the second loudest voice, thus kingmaker in conservative politics. So James thinks he should be able to struggle session Tucker Carlson for platforming someone that he disagrees with because he has a really big podcast. Wants all perspectives to be examined in woke right-ease, including marginalized knowledge. So James is literally, so this person says, it seems like he's switching gears from attacking actual Marxists to attacking whom he deems the woke right, because Daryl wants all perspectives of World War II examined. And James is saying, you are on the woke right if you want all perspectives examined. The only perspective that's allowed, apparently, is the perspective of James Lindsay. Okay. He keeps going on. Oh, here is where James is accusing Megyn Kelly of being on the woke right because she went to an event with Tucker Carlson. That's what he's implying there. He's saying, would you please explain to me in easy to understand terms what those three have in common that you don't? That's someone responding to that picture we just saw. James says, being on board with what Tucker Carlson is doing these days. So that is James's definition of being on the woke right. This person responds, do you really think Tucker is behaving in a coherent and consistent manner? His views seem totally idiosyncratic, blah, blah, blah. James says, yes, sort of yes. He's also visibly angry, so partly no. Tucker has been platforming suspicious woke right figures for years. always doing oddly puffball interviews and therefore mainstreaming them in the conservative ecosystem. Tucker Carlson just cucked the whole conservative movement celebrity class, dropped the Nazi revisionism right before his tour, and then watched people line up and get on stage with him anyway. Loyalty ritual, souls sold to keep the opportunity. He's literally saying that Tucker Carlson struggle sessioned anyone that is appearing at any of these events with him. This is all from today. This is all within the last hour. All of these things are within the last hour. I'm not angry with anyone, not even the people persecuting me and threatening extortion on me right now. I'm trying to figure out the right thing to do, which my gut tells me involves abandoning most of my unfinished long-term projects that might have missed their hour. I mean, hey, listen, if James wants to abandon his stuff on the left, I'll do it. I've been doing better work anyway. I'll do it. This is literally all today. Murphy Spool said, the first time I heard the term woke right was from me in early 2022. Yeah, I was using it for at least a year before that. I'm pretty sure I was the person that coined that term. Let's see. I did document some of this stuff on my Twitter. I was talking about guns there. But I gotta scroll a bit. There's a couple more goodies. James talking about shooting wild animals. James retweeting Rabbi Barclay in that interview he did yesterday. All I know about Megyn, as in Megyn Kelly, is that she canceled me over a smear in February of 2021. I haven't given her almost any significant thought since then. Gee, James, doesn't that suck to be canceled over a smear? Gee, James, I would almost feel badly for you if you weren't smearing other people and canceling other people. Let's see, he just keeps complaining about this. Watching James Lindsay lose his fucking mind has been hilarious. It's been more fun experiencing it, all right. Oh, this is one of my favorite. This person called James out. The fact that James is now supporting censorship and calling people who have different perspectives on Israel than him the woke right. James says, when did I ever support censorship? Guys, do we remember a time when James supported censorship? Can anyone remember a time when James Lindsay supported censorship? Does anyone have any ideas when that might have happened? Does anyone remember a time when James Lindsay supported censorship? I remember a time when James Lindsay supported censorship. I remember a time when I did a Socialism Saturday stream that then my work was stolen by one of James Lindsay's friends, Melanie Bennett, who openly admitted that she stole my work, and we got the Babylon Bee to give me credit for my work on Not the Bee, which is their nonfiction site. And then as soon as Not the Bee gave me credit for my work, James entered into their replies and said, you got struggle sessioned by an abusive narcissist cult. Reach out. We'll talk. Advise removing the link. You don't owe the internet a finder's fee. And then the Babylon Bee removed the link to the full stream that James Lindsay's friend, Melanie Bennett, stole my work from and admitted it. And I had a whole interaction with them. We have James on video admitting he steals people's work. But I remember when James Lindsay supported censorship. I remember. Back to this. WTF is the woke right? People who see that we are out of time for stupid debates. Be steadfast. Keep the commandments. Fear not. Love good and evil. Pray for forgiveness. James has lost his fucking mind. Oh, here is Benjamin Boyce's threat, post on woke centrism, which is actually pretty funny. I advise people to read it. James continues to struggle session Benjamin Boyce on this. This is all today. Like, it's crazy. He's lost his fucking mind. Anyway, it just keeps going and going. You can find more of James's posts on my Twitter feed. Oh, here's where he comes after. He retweeted So Middle MAGA, who we love, retweeted my clip of James, and then he posted a reply to it, and so James found it and retweeted him. And so Middle MAGA said, "This hurts me to say, but I honestly don't care. James Lindsay has become an irrelevant fool." And then James retweets him and says, "Woke right has to box me out because I'm one of the few who can see what they are. Get ready. Your movement is about to get hijacked by radicals and conservatives, and you won't know how it happened." So James is telling MAGA voters and Republicans and neocons that the dissident right is about to radicalize your movement. They're about to hijack your movement. I actually think that would be a great thing. I think that would pull them more right, and I think that would actually be better. But James is like, "I'm warning you guys. I'm warning you. Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson are going to win." What a grifter. Naruto says, "Did you have a chance to listen to my song before the stream?" Yeah, Naruto, I'm going to play it on the way out, so I do have it actually pulled up. We'll listen to it later. Anyway, this is all in public, guys, so if you don't believe me, just go look at James's Twitter feed. I don't even know what to say. But like it is absolutely crazy. Yeah, it is so slimy the way he only talks to and about you by addressing people in your replies. Isn't it funny? Why is James retweeting someone in my Twitter replies? James blocked me on Twitter. Remember, I'm not allowed to respond to James, but James is like scrolling through the replies, looking for something obsessively to respond to. Yeah, I haven't been paying attention to the to Boyce today, but listen, man, I like Benjamin Boyce. I always have. I hope Benjamin Boyce wakes up. I really do. Anyway, guys, so that's what's going on with James Lindsay's Twitter. Now, again, we are going to get to that interview that Tucker Carlson did, but do you guys mind if I take a point of personal privilege and we watch this thing about James? And before we do, I want to get some alcohol. Can we vote on the alcohol? Hang on, let me get the alcohol. All right, so this is happy hour, which means it's not beer today. I actually got an assortment of ciders, of hard ciders. And so it's a cider kind of day. It's fall. I've been feeling it. And so you guys get to vote on which cider I drink first. So let me show you the selection. Our first selection is going to be a cider donut cider. I actually usually drink a different cider donut cider, but I wanted to try this one. This is from Citizen Cider. It's called Baker's Dozen, and this is a cider donut hard cider. I love cider donut cider. I strongly recommend you this is a new brand. I've never tried this one before, but if you haven't ever tried this or one like it, definitely try it because it's so fucking good. So that is our first option. Our second option, I'm calling this the Imperial Special because this is a very special small batch cider. 1911 is one of my favorite cider companies because they have these cans that they have this super nice texture on them. And I know that's not about the cider, it's about the can, but the nice texture on the can is just really, really appealing. This is a special small batch of all the same apples, and it's called the Lafayette hard cider, and it's a very special one. And so that's our second choice. I'm calling that the Imperial Special. That is our second option. Our third option is another one I haven't tried, and this is a New Hampshire cider, and it's made from it's from Stark Brewing and Distillery in Manchester, New Hampshire, and this is going to be a sweet apple cider. So this one has a dog on it. I don't know if that makes a difference. Their logo is a dog, and it's 6.6% alcohol, so that seems good. And the last one, I think might be the one you guys go for. It's a candy corn cider. A special Halloween 6.9% alcohol content candy corn cider. Not spider, cider. So I'm putting the poll in the chat. Again, we've got our cider donut cider. We've got our Imperial Special Small Batch Apple Crazy Cider. We've got our Sweet Apple Cider. And we've got our Candy Corn Cider. Let me know which one you'd like me to drink in the chat. And today I'm going to be drinking out of a very special cup that Victor got me a set of these for my birthday. And it looks very fancy. And check this out. Ooh. We can take the cup, which is fancy and lovely, and put it inside this little holder, and we have a handle. And so that's what I'm going to be drinking out of today, and it's a cool little thing. Oh, it is the 13th. It's Friday the 13th. Holy shit, I didn't even realize. There's a shocking disparity between the people watching and those who have mounted the like button. That's a really good observation, Naruto. Let's get those numbers up, folks. Let's get those numbers up over on YouTube. If you're watching on Rumble, please make sure you like over there as well. Please make sure you are subscribed to my channel over on Rumble. I appreciate you guys joining me. Let's see. Yup, candy corn is going to win the day. Candy corn will win the day. So we're going to get our candy corn cider. I'm going to put the rest of these ciders back in the fridge. And now we're going to get into it. We got a lot of stuff to watch today, guys. And I appreciate you humoring me. I just want to make sure that I watch this video from James to learn how James is teaching about woke language or leftist language and see how much of my shit he's copying. And then we're going to go into the interview that Tucker Carlson did. And, wait, Fluffy Cow Respecter, do you have an issue with the candy corn cider? What was your vote, Fluffy Cow Respecter? Let me know in the chat. All right, let's listen to this and let's see what James said about not trusting woke language, and let's see how much of my work he steals.
You are listening to New Discourses Bullets, where I give a short, almost bullet point-like summary of a single topic from woke Marxism and fighting back against it that we need to know so that we can beat it. I want to talk about an anti-communist characteristic, maybe the most important anti-communist characteristic today. And I get asked all the time, James, what do we do? James, how do we fight back against this? And you know what? That's a hard question to answer because it really depends on, your talents, your opportunities. Are you in office? Are you a lawyer? Are you a normal mom or dad? It depends a lot, right? And a lot of people that are asking me are in different positions, but a lot of them are just normal moms and dads. But I'm going to just tell you a kind of background. It's like a prerequisite to being able to fight back in whatever domain you're going to.
No, fuck you, James. Oh my God. I already know what he's going to say. This is, guys, what, pop quiz for the chat. What do I say to people when they come to me and they say, Carlin, how do we fight back against the left? How do we fight back against the left? How do we fight back against the left? What do I say to them universally every single time? Pop quiz in the chat. What do I say to people when they come to me and ask me, how do you fight back against the left? What I say to them, you have to learn the language. I say you have to learn the language. You say that you have to learn the language. 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 Learn the language. Learn the dictionary. Learn the language. You learn the language. You learn the language. Oh, James can eat every fucking dick. If James honestly says that the first thing you have to do is learn the language, let's see.
A prerequisite to being able to fight back in whatever domain you're going to stand up and get involved, whether that's just having conversations with your own kids or with your neighbors, whether that's getting involved in a political campaign, whether that's being a legislator, whether that's being an attorney general doing good lawsuits against various aspects of what's going on in the world. It doesn't matter. There's a prerequisite that everybody needs to understand. And I've been kind of telling people on stage for years that this is like the bad news or the bitter pill.
No, he hasn't.
There's no way around this.
Nope.
The most important anti-communist characteristic that you can develop and that you need to develop is suspicion about their language.
James, I went to your in-person presentation in 2021, and you absolutely did not say this in the in-person presentation. And we searched your Twitter feed, James. We searched your Twitter feed for this the other day. I'll debate that. I will debate that Jewish bitch. That Jewish bitch thinks I'm afraid of her. I will debate that bitch into the ground. I have no problem with that. That Jewish bitch wants to debate me? Seriously? Seriously. Seriously. We'll come back to James in a second. Hang on. That Jewish bitch wants to debate me, and the reason I keep calling her a Jewish bitch, I don't actually care if people are Jewish, by the way. But she seems to be really offended every time people point out that she's Jewish. So let's see. Let me see. I know I have her. The reason I'm going to my profile is I know I have her. I know I have her in my profile. Hang on. I'm not afraid of her. So this is who it is. She works for Epic Times, an American thought leader. Let's see. Hi, Carlin. Why didn't she tag me? Why didn't she tag me? Oh, you guys can't see this. Hang on. Why didn't she tag me? Hi, Carlin. Since you claim to understand my views so well, I was quoting you directly from the interview that you did, and yet extract from my actual words to misrepresent them at every turn. At every turn, I posted a 5-minute clip. And even contradict yourself in the process? No, I don't. I'm happy to settle this via a one-on-one public discussion. Oh. Let me respond to her. I'm going to respond on my phone because it'll be quicker that way. This Jewish woman thinks that I'm afraid of debating her anytime. She is welcome to come on my channel and talk anytime. She has an open invite to come on my channel and talk anytime she wants. Your move. I don't even know how to pronounce her name. Your move, Jewish bitch. I'm not going to say that in the tweet, but your move. Unlike you, I don't mind tagging when I'm talking about someone. All right, everyone can retweet that. Yeah. This Jew. Listen, again, I don't care if people are Jewish, but like, it's just so fun when they get angry to call them Jewish. So you guys can see the tweet I just sent. I'll go back to my profile. I said, this Jewish woman thinks I'm afraid of debating her. She has an open invite to come in my channel. Well, she can't come in my channel. Jeez. That's presumptuous. Let me see if I can edit that. That's a typo. That is a phone-related typo. Come on my channel. That's better. And talk anytime she God fucking damn it, why do I have so many typos? Anytime she wants. This is what happens when I tweet on my phone. Don't retweet that until I'm done. Your move, unlike you, I don't mind tagging when I'm talking about someone else. So look at this. Look how productive this stream is already. We've already caught James literally stealing my fucking work again. And we have challenged or accepted the challenge of this Jewish woman to a debate. Well, go retweet it again, bot. Yeah, the energy is on our side, Reagan. Exactly. All right, back to James.
The way that they use words is deceptive.
No
they
shit,
mean
James.
something different
No
than what you
shit.
think the words they are using would mean. And you have got to develop a suspicion about their words. This means having developed an intuition about when they're using their words. And again, this doesn't matter if you are, an everyday teacher, or whether you're a superintendent of schools for an entire state, or anything in between, just to kind of pick on education as a field. You have got to understand that I did a whole podcast episode on this, every woke term conceals an agenda. So you need to start developing a sense that this term or that term might be woke. It's incredibly important to become suspicious. People send me stuff all the time. And they say, James, is this bad? Is this woke? And I say, well, let's look at it. And sometimes it's like really obvious. It uses blatant words like diversity, equity, and inclusion, or belonging. All these words we've been very familiar with. Anti-racist, queer. Queer doesn't show up nearly as often, by the way, as you would think. They hide that one behind LGBTQ+.
No, wrong. Wrong, James. Wrong. See, James is confused because the only thing that James looks at is like low-level DEI training. And by the way, guys, I hope everyone understands this, but just in case you might be new, like a lot of the right talks about DEI, 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 DEI all the time. But the reality is that when you really look at what the left is doing and you look at the totality of what the left is doing, like DEI is like 5 levels down from actually the important stuff. It's like very, very low level training that I'm not saying it's unimportant. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying we shouldn't, go against it. But like getting rid of DEI is not actually going to come anywhere close to solving the problem. And if you're only looking at DEI trainings, and I used to only look at DEI trainings back when I first started doing this 4 years ago, I really only looked at DEI trainings and that sort of stuff. But unlike James Lindsay, in the last 4 years, I have learned and I have grown and I have expanded my knowledge in this area. Whereas James Lindsay is literally talking about the same fucking thing he was talking about 4 fucking years ago. And what I learned is that there are way more important things to focus on than DEI training. So I agree with James that if you're only focusing on low-level DEI training that's not really that important in the grand scheme of things, you're not going to hear the term queer a lot, but we don't focus on low-level DEI training, James. We focus on the higher-level stuff that is informing and trickling down into the low-level DEI training where they do say queer all the fucking time.
As an acronym, and that's sort of what I'm talking about. You've got to be suspicious. What do they really mean by this acronym? And they send me this, but sometimes I don't know the terms. They're new terms. They spin off new terms faster than I can do anything about them.
I know the terms.
Nobody can learn all their terms.
I know the terms.
But I can look at it and I can immediately get the sense this probably isn't okay. It's filled with buzzwords. And the reason isn't because I know all this stuff. It's because I've developed an intuition that they might be using buzzwords and specialist and managerial language in
the video's too loud. Okay, I'll turn it down a little bit. It does seem a little bit loud. Okay, thanks, Fluffy.
Order to shuttle in their agendas behind the scenes. So if that's one of your warning signs to get suspicious about their words. This isn't going to be a podcast about, oh, this is what diversity really means. This is what inclusion really means. This is what democracy really means. This is what, belonging really means. We could go through those. We have gone through those. I have a website on New Discourses, a whole section called Translations from the Wokest, where I tried to keep up with that. And I couldn't keep up with it because for every one I would take the time to research and explain, I'd find 10 more. And it's just, there's so many. But the first thing that you can start to realize is that if it's a buzzword, it might be woke. And if it's woke, every woke word conceals an agenda one way or another. Either it means two things or it means something specialist you're not aware of. Equity is an example of a word that is a specialist meaning. It sounds good, but it doesn't mean something good. It means the same thing as socialism, exactly. An administered system in which shares are adjusted to make participants equal. That's equity. Well, it's not like diversity, which is an everyday word that you might think is, okay, but they have a different meaning. That's a word that just has a specialist meaning that you don't know. You've got to get familiar with their buzzwords and foreseeing what looks like a buzzword and understand.
So just so people know, and this is something, so I do actually have a dictionary where I define all of their key terms. But this is something I've really been thinking about expanding as I'm working on this re-education series. I'm working on I'm working on a whole bunch of educational stuff. I'm hoping to announce some stuff next week about like different things and having different options available. So that's going to be happening. But I want people to know that I'm going to be doing a formalized version of my dictionary that's going to be just a little bit more nicely put together. That's going to be, I think I'm going to do it as like an ebook that people can download and stuff like that. And so, so that is something that is coming, so that we find that where all the words are defined simply and clearly. You know, people will say, James already has a dictionary on newdiscourses.com. But if you go on newdiscourses.com and you go to James's dictionary, every entry is like a 6-page fucking treatise on the academic history of that word, and no one can actually understand it. It doesn't make actually any sense. And a lot of it's actually outdated information. So in my dictionary, it's going to be short definitions that are concise, that are to the point. I've already put this information out there. I'm just going to be packaging it a little bit differently, building out the words a little bit more to make it a little bit more robust. I just want to let people know that that's coming. And again, I do hope to make some announcements next week in that regard.
That it might be a problem. So when you see specialist language, you've got to start asking some questions. My friend and co-author Logan Lansing, who wrote The Queering of the American Child with me, wrote an essay for New Discourses, and he's on social media all the time saying, please, people, be curious. This is what he did. This is why the book, The Queering of the American Child, which is now helping over 10,000 Americans and Canadians and others understand what's going on in education with queer theory, that book came into existence because Logan Lansing came across some of those concepts, the queer theory concepts, in education 4 or 5 years ago, and he was like, what in the world is this? And he started looking into it. The reason I'm doing what I'm doing is I ran into feminist manipulations and feminist concepts like systemic sexism, and I said, what in the world is this? And I started to look into it. You've got to get curious about their manipulative language. The most important anti-communist characteristic you can develop is being suspicious about their uses of language. Another big kind of sign that you're dealing with manipulated and manipulating language is that you're seeing a word that you're familiar with, but it doesn't feel like it's being used correctly, right? They're using a word like diversity or democracy.
So All-Seeing Guy says, our democracy is one I hear all the time from these commie types. When socialists say democracy, they mean socialism. They don't believe, socialists do not believe that we currently live in a democracy, because we don't live in a democracy, we live in a republic. Socialists don't like that we live in a republic. That's why they want to abolish the Constitution. They want to abolish the Electoral College, the United States Senate. They want to really abolish the executive branch. They want to abolish the Supreme Court. They want to abolish all courts. The only thing they're kind of okay with is like a House of Representatives style thing, but even that they want to completely change the form of. They believe the only true form of democracy is socialism. So that's why they use that term.
That you're familiar with. You know that word. You would never stop and ask somebody what the definition of it is. You're familiar with that word. You use that word probably in your everyday speech. And yeah, it doesn't feel like that's how it's being used. That right there is the feeling that the word is mystified. So you might notice, like, you know, all of the Democrats are always saying our democracy, save our democracy. We have to censor people to save our democracy. We have to make sure, this is the one I saw today, that Kamala Harris doesn't appear in any interviews or any of this stuff because her main objective is to win in order to save our democracy. Save our democracy. Well, democracy, what in the world? Doesn't it feel like that word?
Can James get through an entire podcast without calling Kamala Harris a communist? This isn't even about Kamala Harris.
Might be being abused. Well, that's a big hint that something's going on there. What they're not telling you historically is that they're following Lenin's tracks, which is actually following Marx's tracks. And what Lenin did was split democracy. This takes place in his book, The State and Revolution. He considered it a pamphlet. In chapter 5, I'll do a full-length podcast on that soon, so by the time you're listening to this, it might actually exist, that chapter. And he split democracy into proletarian democracy and bourgeois democracy, and then a third kind is ideal democracy. And so proletarian democracy simulates ideal democracy.
It's a little sweet. It
but
does
bourgeois
like
democracy, which is
good.
what we have in capitalist countries,
Capital.
cannot become ideal.
In a capitalist country, Yes, James, correct. Bourgeois democracy means capitalist country. Correct. A rare, correct definition.
It has to keep favoring the rich people. And so then when they say democracy, you can probably guess that they're actually talking about saving their proletarian democracy, where they have a new proletariat in all of their different.
Hey, do you guys know how I literally just explained 2 seconds ago that when socialists say democracy, they really mean socialism? This is something that I've tweeted about. This is something that I've actually corrected James on multiple occasions. It does seem as though James has gotten the message, because James is about to say that when socialists say democracy, they mean socialism.
Minority groups and in the
intelligentsia,
the so-called intellectual classes that they're using as the vehicle of radicalization, which also follows Lenin. Lenin said that his vanguard that was going to transform Russia into the Soviet Union and bring communism about through enforced socialism, that vanguard was to be people who studied and understood and advanced the highest levels of communist theory. That's who was going to actually have to be in charge. And, you know, we get a visual example of what that looks like in the Olympics with that break dancer, Rachel Gunn.
Yes, yes. The very best example of communists taking control of society is that awful break dancer in the Olympics. Does James even hear himself? The very best example of communists taking control of our society is an awful break dancer in the Olympics.
Who got 0 points doing her woke breakdance. So here's the deal. If you see a word that you feel familiar with, diversity, but it doesn't feel like when they talk about it that diversity is really welcome, you know, you're not allowed to have different opinions, or inclusion, but it seems like they're using inclusion as a reason to silence people or kick people out, that's a word being misused. So when you have that sense, you need to pause, and then you need to get curious, and you need to start suspecting it might be woke. Because again, the most important anti-communist characteristic is suspicion about their use of language. Your suspicion about their words. You need to be suspicious of that because they know. Bella Dodd in 1953 in her testimony to the House Committee on Un-American Activities. She was a defected Communist Party USA high-ranking member, and she explained that the communists colonize every good and bad word, every word that has strong positive or strong negative associations, and they ascribe to themselves the positive ones, and they pin to their enemies the negative ones. They're misusing words. Racist, homophobe, Islamophobe. They're misusing words, and they're doing it in a way that you can actually start to realize just by noticing that word that they're using doesn't seem to be the normal way that word gets used. When you notice that, you need to get curious. You need to...
All right. That's enough of that. Like, I'm sorry. Like James is just rambling at this point. James, when he stole my line, and he absolutely stole that from me. I'm sorry. James can claim that he's been talking about this for years all he wants, but we went through his Twitter feed. We listened to... I have people in my community that they used to listen to everything James said. Oh, did she respond? We'll look at her response in a second. Guys, for people who listened to James for a while, did James ever talk about, guys, if you want to fight back against the left, you need to learn the language? Is that something that James was saying all the time? Because that kind of sounds like it came from me, because I say that shit literally all the time. Literally anytime someone asks me, what can I do to fight back against the left? I'm like, you need to learn the language. You need to learn the language. You need to learn the language. That's why we do Socialism Saturday. You need to learn the language. I never heard James say that. So, and again, I know I have people who used to listen to a lot of James's content. Yeah, we will deal with the Jewish bitch in a second. Hang on. I need an answer about this. Has James ever said this before? Liquid Marble says, I followed James on Instagram and he never told his followers about the language of socialism. Human Centipede says, no, James never said anything about that. Tayton says, I never heard him say it back in the day, but I understood the task is to know your enemy. Mad Hatter said no, he never said that. Texas Gal says never that I can remember. Yeah, James stole that shit from me. Confirmed, James. All right, let's go back and look at the Jewish woman again. God. You know, Jewish women always think that everything is about them. Jewish women think the world revolves around them. They think that, I mean, probably not just Jewish women, but I actually don't usually have this problem with Jewish men, if I'm honest about it. I have I was thinking about this the other night. Like, I do actually have Jewish friends, and they're all male. They're all male. Because I find, I mean, maybe this is just true of women in general. It could be all women, but I find that the Jewish ones tend to be particularly demanding of my time and there is a reason the term Jewish princess exists. And I'm like, I'm literally in the middle of a stream right now about other things like that are not about you, girl. Your moment was yesterday. We talked about you yesterday. But no, she got tweeted at me when I'm on a stream. Let's see what she says. LOL, the fact that you keep pointing out that I'm Jewish, as if that is indicative of anything, is sinister proof of your own prejudices. No, I called you Jewish because I knew it would trigger you. Also, as a point of privilege, you are literally Jewish. Girl, if you called me French, if you tweeted this French woman wants to debate me, I'd be like, yeah, I am French. You could say Irish. You could say this Irish woman wants to debate me. And I'd be like, yup. You could call me English, although that's like a smaller part of my overall genetic makeup. You could say this British woman wants to debate me. And I'd be like, okay, well, I don't really like being associated with the British, but okay, fine. I would have preferred you call me French or Irish. You could have said, this dyed red hair woman wants to debate me, and I'd be like, yup. So why can't I accurately point out that this woman is Jewish? Yeah, Carlin O'Roy Senko. She could have even said, this woman who is married to a Ukrainian wants to debate me. I'd be like, yeah, I am married to a Ukrainian. So what? Are you jealous? Do you have a husband? Gotta interrupt everything, make it all about them. And once again, you are putting words in my mouth. I never said nor implied that you're afraid of debating me, but I understand how that type of ego posturing plays better to your viewers. Is she watching us right now? Do we think the Jewish woman is watching us right now? Yeah, I bet she has no husband too. Yep. As I mentioned, I'm happy to talk to you if it's on your channel. Let's make certain conditions are agreed upon. Listen, I'll lay out the conditions. You're invited to come on my channel. You will be treated cordially by me and my audience. You will be allowed to say whatever it is you want to say. And then I can say whatever I want to say. And if you become uncordial, that will be on you because we treat everyone cordially on my channel. And then you will leave. And then we will stay and we will possibly gossip about you. Those are the conditions. You don't get to make the rules on my channel. My channel is my private property. You don't own my channel. And what do you mean? Unlike you, I have no problem tagging. You literally didn't tag me. That's why I didn't see it. You didn't tag me. If you want me to tag you, I gladly will. I just assumed you would see what I wrote because it was a retweet of your post. I don't always look at fucking retweets, so I didn't realize I needed to provide some. This woman is like losing it. Count on you to take some completely innocent and turn it into some sort of ridiculous power play. All right, let me go and respond to her. And I'll do it on my phone again just because it's going to be quicker than me responding online, and then I'll show you. Where the fuck is this response? Okay, let me just go to her profile. Yeah, she tagged me at the end. Hi, Jewish woman. As I said, You have an open invite to come on my channel and discuss whatever issues you have. You do not get to set the rules on my channel. I know I know your people. Hang on. She's gonna fucking love this. I know your people think they can control everyone else. But my channel is my channel. However, I will guarantee that you will be treated cordially as we treat everyone cordially on my channel, even communists. Although, I want to make some crack about that might be the same as being Jewish. No, that might be a bit too much. That might be, I already did the your people thing, and that might be enough. You let me know, and I'll schedule you in. No, she can, whatever. She can fucking settle down. There we go. I responded. All right, this is what I responded as. I'll show you guys the tweet. Yeah, she used the term your people when she thanked she thanks James Lindsay in that interview for defending your people. So I'll go to my profile. And I said, "Hello, Jewish woman," and then I tagged her. As I said, you have an open invite to come on my channel and discuss whatever issues you have. You do not get to set the rules on my channel. I know your people think they can control everyone else, but my channel is my channel. However, I will guarantee that you will be treated cordially as we treat everyone cordially on my channel, even communists. You let me know and I'll schedule you in. Well, you in. And not your, I can never post anything on Twitter without a fucking typo. Hang on, we'll schedule you in, not your in. There we go. All right. Now let's get down to business. And we're going to watch this Tucker Carlson interview with this historian. And if you guys want to support the work I'm doing, help me reach my super chat goal of $100, which I think is a pretty modest goal. We're going to be here for a while. We've already got, like $17. So, guys, sending in super chats does help support the streaming that I do. It basically pays for my time and all this stuff. So if you appreciate me giving you a little bit of an entertaining show and potentially getting myself banned on Twitter from calling a Jewish woman Jewish, because apparently it's not allowed for you to call a Jewish woman Jewish. You know, send me $5. I might need the $5. I might lose my YouTube channel from this. I don't know. Oy vey, Carlin. Goyim, we will get you in jail for 6 million years for hate speech. I didn't say anything hateful. All I did was correctly call her Jewish. I really don't feel like I did anything wrong. Anyway, who in the chat has seen this interview? Did I set up the sound correctly? Press 1 in the chat if you've already seen this interview. Press 2 in the chat if you have not seen this interview. Yeah, I don't suspect we'll see her on the channel. So this is the interview that is the proof that Tucker Carlson is on the woke right, and that everyone needs to denounce Tucker Carlson, and that Tucker Carlson is an evil Nazi, Holocaust denial revisionist, and that he is leading the right off the cliff of potentially considering maybe a different perspective about World War II, that of course I denounce. World War II happened exactly as they said it did, obviously. So let's listen and find out what happened. What happened that was so bad?
The big tech companies censor our content. I hate to tell you that it's still going on in 2024, but you know what they can't censor? Live events. And that's why we are hitting the road on a fall tour.
I don't care about that. I don't care about that.
I think, I can tell that you hate compliments, but I just want to say, I think you are the most important popular historian working in the United States today. You work in a different medium on Substack X podcasts, but I'm a fan of yours because of the way you treat history, which is with relentless curiosity and honesty. And I'm sure you have all kinds of political beliefs, religious beliefs, or whatever, but I feel like you get to what you think is true based on really intense research. So
it's just so rare that we have videos that are like too loud, that it's like we're so used to socialist technology that we have to make everything as loud as possible. Okay.
Just for those people who aren't familiar with who you are, I want people to know who you are, and I want you to be widely recognized as the most important historian in the United States, because I think that you are. So that's my last compliment for our time together. I know it was excruciating. Tell us some of the stories, we call them stories, but historical events that you have taken a really close look at recently.
So I decided to start with an easy one. I did a 26-hour series on the early history of Zionism and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Whether that was naivety or hubris, it turned out pretty well.
Yes.
You know, and the reason it turned out well, I think, and I've had time to really think about it over the years. I started it in 2015. It took me a few years to complete. But I've received hundreds of emails from Israelis, from Jews around the world who are, you know, boosters of Israel, as well as Palestinians and people around the Middle East and people who are critical of Israel, who all of them on all sides have kind of told me that it at least opened up their perspective to the way the other side saw the world, which is what I was going for, you know? In all of my series, something that I didn't really...
I think that the series that you did on the formation of Israel, I think is regarded by honest people as the most honest, most non-aligned look. No axes were being ground, maybe ever done. Can you just tell people who aren't familiar that, what did it take to produce that? You said it took a few years, but what did you do in preparation for it?
Well, you know, it's funny actually, because when I first started it, I didn't really know what went into making a podcast like that, right? So I had this experience where I started working on it after I had read maybe like 6 books, because the series only goes up to 1948. I did some follow-up work on the more modern period, but this is up to the foundation of the state of Israel, the lead up to that, right? I only covered that part. And so I didn't know if this was going to be a 1-episode thing, a 2-episode thing. I start working on it after I've read about 6 books on that pre-1948 period. And I'm working on it for maybe, you know, quite a while, taking my time, because I was working for the Department of Defense at the time. So it was, you know, a side gig, and it wasn't even a gig. I didn't make any money from it. But, and after a while, when I started to approach the end of that episode, this is months and months and months later, by now I've read 20 books, 30 books about that pre-1948 period, and a lot of the tangential topics and issues that help you better understand it. And I went back and I started going over what I'd created for that first episode, and it was so embarrassingly terrible, where you look at it and you're like, this is not even, that phrase, not even wrong. It's like, this is not even, it was a nightmare to read. And I realized something at that point. I was like, I'd read 6 books on this topic. 6 books is a lot, you know, on a single historical topic. There's countless topics that I've read a book or 2 on. And if you give me like an energy drink and let me go, I'll start pontificating for hours about it, you know?
Oh, I know the feeling. Yeah. I read a book on the Federal Reserve once.
And so eventually I got to the point, I counted them all up one time. People keep asking me to put together a list. I can't put together a complete one because I just didn't keep as good a track as I should. But I read over 80 whole books, parts of another 100 at least. And about, when I counted them up, I could remember about like 1,300 academic papers and journal. I read everything I could find.
So only people in prison read 80 books.
Yeah. Well, or people who work for the Department of Defense and their job entails spending 8 to 10 months a year going overseas by yourself, often with nothing to do in a country that nobody speaks your language. So I would go over to work with one of our foreign allies, usually on the weapon systems that I specialized in. We'd go over there and we'd work during the day. Most of the Ministry of Defense people, it doesn't matter what country you go to. You can go to Israel, you can go to Norway, you can go to Japan, Korea. All they want to talk about is American gun culture. It's they're obsessed with it.
Noticed.
Yeah. And
Is that an interest of yours?
Hmm?
Are you knowledgeable on that topic?
I wouldn't say I'm necessarily like technically knowledgeable like my gun nut friends are, but yeah, in terms of, I'm a hunter and gun owner, educated gun owner, but I have friends who are real gun nuts that I refer
that's totally
to.
Fair.
Yeah.
Right. It's all specs.
And I say that with all affection when, that's, and so, I would go overseas and spend my work day working with them, training them, helping them with, whatever was broken or needed upgrading, whatever we were doing over there. And sometimes I would spend, like I said, 8 to 10 months a year overseas. I would be doing this by myself most of the time. And so after the workday was done, it's just me in my hotel with nothing really to do. And, when I was growing up, I counted these up one time, and it was between kindergarten and 12th grade. I went to like 35 different schools. Like I was changing schools sometimes every few months.
Not a good sign. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, one of the good habits I picked up from it was reading, because it gave, books were what gave me a sense of continuity from environment to environment to environment, right? I'm in the middle of a book and I move to another school and I have to adjust to that, but I'm still reading this book and it sort of patches me over. And that became sort of the background reality of my life as, I sort of moved around in this unpredictable way, like for most of my early years. I'd still have this thread that was coherent that I was following, consistently. And so it definitely helped with a sense of stability like that. And it implanted this idea that, like I take refuge in books.
Yes.
They if I'm anxious, a lot of people, if they're anxious, they can't sit down and read a book because they can't sit still. Books make my anxiety go away. Right? It's what they do for me. And so, I'm just a nerd is what I'm saying, basically, right? I'm a nerd. And I had a lot of time to read books. And once I started really getting obsessed with the podcast, it got to the point where I was waking up 3 hours early so that I could read and write and work on the podcast. If I was in a meeting and we were waiting for the next speaker to come in, I was working on the podcast. Lunch, I was working on the podcast. Evening, I was working on the podcast. And became like a real obsession, partly because, left to my own devices, I would read books and talk to people about them. That's, if I had $1 trillion and nothing to do with myself, I would want a whole library and a bunch of interesting people to talk to about these books. That's what I'd do anyway, right? And so it was never really work. But yeah, that's the way you do it. People who want to do, there's a lot of people I know who started doing history.
I know I am offended to my core at the idea that Tucker Carlson would dare interview some guy who read a lot of books and then made a podcast talking about the things that he was thinking about as he was reading the books. Are you guys offended by this? This is obviously woke.
History podcasts or other, maybe not history, but not sort of conversational, just back and forth discussion podcasts where they do research and they want to make a presentation, right? And a lot of these guys who started back when I started, 2015, 2016, and, my success up to this point has been kind of unique in the space. Not everybody wants to listen to a 7-hour podcast on Jim Jones. And by the way, that's only the 5th out of 7 episodes on the topic, right? So that's not for everybody. And, they ask me sometimes, like, how do I
find people that want to sit around and watch socialism for hours at a time? I feel like I am finding people that want to sit around and watch socialism for hours at a time, but I feel like I can find more. I feel like these types of people are out there. And like, if this guy can get people to listen to a 7-hour podcast about Jonestown, if I'm honest about it, I probably would listen to a 7-hour podcast about Jonestown because that's just kind of like interesting and dystopian. We watched it. We did a 2-part series about Jonestown a while ago. Yeah, they're autistic. It's true. I need autists. We need to reach out to the autists.
Do this as well as you do it. And other people who are like aspiring podcasters have asked me that. And like you said, I don't like compliments. And so I get shy when people ask me things like that, but I tell them, and you're going to object to this because you're a nice fellow and everything, but like, I'm not that smart. It's nothing like that. I work on this. You have to like, if you want to do something like this, you have to be willing to get up a little early, to use your lunch hour, you got to spend time in books. You got to read. And then when you think you've read enough, you got to read some more. And because there's so much out there. Like I said, that experience after I had read 6 books on just the pre-1948 period of, the Zionist Israeli-Palestinian conflict story. And I knew nothing, Tucker. I knew nothing. Like embarrassingly nothing. Worse than nothing. Because like at least before I read
It was
the
the
books,
illusion of knowledge.
yeah, at least before I had read the books, I would just be repeating to you whatever I had heard, Benjamin Netanyahu say or somebody like on TV. I at least would have just been repeating that. This was worse. This was like the full midwit kind of meme in production where you know enough to really embarrass yourself. And I'm glad that I sort of recognized that at the time. And I went back and like scrapped the whole thing, didn't start it for another year after that, probably, because I just realized that, I got to get deeper into this. And as I've moved through different topics over the years, because I don't do an Israel-Palestine podcast, I do a history podcast, and I choose topics based on what I want to read about. That's all it is. Like usually while I'm working on one, something, as I'm sort of getting into the second half, finishing it up, I can see the finish line on the thing I'm working on now. It'll get harder and harder to discipline myself to stay on that topic because there's something that's pulling me away.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. And so it's like a feeling of relief where like I finish it and now I already know the next topic because it just emerged kind of naturally. And I move on to that. And sometimes they're very, very different. I've done, like I said, a 32-hour series.
That Jewish woman responded to me
on the Jonestown cult, which turned into, you say, how do you do 32 hours on that? I told the story of, the People's Temple.
32 hours.
Yeah, well, the reason for that, and I didn't know this going in. I never know exactly how this is going to unfold when I'm going in, unless it's like.
Hang on. Let me show you. I have an assignment for everyone. Okay, I have an assignment for everyone. This is not to do with the Jewish woman. So, James tweeted this out. I'm tired of the lies. I'm voting for Trump. This person responded to James saying, I'm tired of James's lies. I'm following Carlin instead. I recommend all of you do the same. She's hinged into reality and she's a lot more entertaining. Here's what I need everyone to do. First off, I need everyone to go and retweet this. And then I need everyone to respond to this and say so I'm not going to tell you exactly what to write, but something to the effect of, yeah, I follow Carlin too and she's way better than James. And you can wordsmith that however you want, but I just think that would make my Friday afternoon. All right. Got to get the sound set up again. We're back. I really am like people have been telling me for years. They're like, Carlin, this is going to be the year you break out. This is going to be the year you break out. I'm like, I don't know about that. My work is pretty complicated. I've never really felt it like other people have, and I've never really counted on that. But I'm kind of starting to feel like it might be coming into my time. James is going insane. My audience is bigger than ever. I have more support than ever. Like I feel like, guys, I feel like we might be there. I feel like we're on the precipice of something great.
Sometimes I'll do a single episode and I kind of know the story, but when I start a long series, it's going to take me a year and a half to put out every episode. I don't necessarily know how it's going to turn out. And, when you look at something like the Jonestown cult, and for people who don't know,
can you see this
in
Jewish
1978, everybody's heard the phrase, don't drink the Kool-Aid, yes. Right? And that's what people know about Jonestown, basically, is that Christianity sometimes goes off the rails, don't drink the Kool-Aid. 1,000 people, 900, I think 16
Jonestown wasn't Christianity. Jonestown was socialism.
People committed mass suicide in the jungles of Guyana, right? At the direction of this preacher, Jim Jones. That's what most people know about it. when you open any book about it, even mainstream books about it, which, you know, again, most people don't get to that point. This won't be in any of the documentaries for the most part that you see. We open to like page 1 or 2 of any book about it, and the first thing you see is that 75% of the people that died out there were African Americans.
Yeah. Black women from Oakland.
From Oakland, but if they were over 40 or 50 years old, there weren't really any black people in Oakland until the Second World War. So these were migrants who had come from the South as part of the Great Migration, right? And you'd think like if 75% of the people that died out there were Mexican immigrants, first generation Mexican, that wouldn't be a part of the story.
I'm beginning to form a theory about why people are so pissed off that Tucker Carlson talked to this guy. And again, I have no idea who this guy is. I have literally never listened to this guy before. I don't know what his arguments are. I know nothing about his track record. But he is coming across to me as someone who is measured. He's coming across to me as someone who's like a reasonable person. He's coming across to me like someone who is like, you know, studious and probably autistic and but just like he's kind of a likable enough guy, and he's explaining things very simply, and he doesn't come across as a kook. He doesn't come across as a crazy person in any way. And that might inherently be the problem. Well, listen, my position is a little bit different than Candace Owens because I don't work for the Daily Wire. I have my own operation. I have multiple different sources of income. I don't report to anyone. I especially don't report to anyone Jewish. I'm not even saying anything about the Holocaust. In fact, the only thing I've said about the Holocaust is that exactly 6,000,001 Jews died in the Holocaust, and I don't want anyone insinuating anything differently. Like, I'm not actually doing anything. Literally all I said was to quote that woman correctly when she said that if you were anti-war and anti-interventionist, that meant you were part of the woke right. So I'm not that worried about it.
Story. That would be like the story. Like, what is going on here, right? Not just how did this religious cult get out of control, and like you really need to understand that. I never knew that. I always knew about Jonestown on the surface level, but I saw that. I'm like, I have to understand this better. And so, you know, it drew me like deep into the history of African American life in America post slavery, and really, really deep into the Great Migration and the forces that drove it and the experiences that African Americans encountered when they got to the cities of the North and West, when they left the rural South. And, you know, when I get emotional when I think about the Jonestown story. I worked on that for a long time. I read literally every single book or thing that's been written about it. And
there's a lot of I think it was UCSB had an interview series. I mean, there's just a lot out there.
Well, not only that, the FBI seized 1,000 hours of tapes from Jonestown after the suicide, and they're all available online. I've listened to all of it and most of it twice. Like for months, I had this guy's sermons in my head. I had their like backroom midnight meetings where they're all going through struggle sessions, screaming at each other, beating each other up. All of their recordings of these late night torchlight sessions that they would have out in Guyana in the jungle.
Oh, she unfollowed
if you
me
watch
on
most
Twitter. She
documentaries
followed me
about
up until, like, 5 minutes
Jonestown,
ago.
it's all about the craziness of the last year, which is when they were all actually in Jonestown in Guyana. These people have been together for 20 years.
Yes.
You know, he started his first church in the 1950s, and this is a guy, Jim Jones, who you know, in 1953 in Indianapolis, which was a KKK stronghold at the time, you know, because the second KKK was not really a Southern anti-Black movement. It was more of a Midwest and Northern urban anti-Catholic, anti-Jewish movement. And so Indianapolis was one of the strongholds, and that's where he lived at the time. He's like
if that Jewish woman does agree to come on my channel, I'm literally gonna title the stream "Carlin Talks to a Jewish Woman." Yeah, I don't understand how any of this is Holocaust denial. Maybe we'll get there.
23-year-old guy. He was born in 39, maybe. He's 24 years old, starting his first little Methodist church in this storefront with folding chairs, you know. And he and his congregation are going out and boycotting stores in 1953. years before anybody heard of a bus boycott or anything like that. And, with Martin Luther King, he's going out there and doing that, getting death threats from KKK leaders, getting death threats from the American Nazi Party, trying to integrate these businesses, right? And so this is a true believer. Like when it comes to this, his family, he adopted he was the first white family to adopt an African-American child in the history.
Steven, I have to say that I can't stand the fact you always go after other content providers. Just do your own stuff. Steven, are you tracking along with what I've been saying? Because those other content providers that you're feeling oh so protective of, they actively steal my content. And then they smear me and they defame me and they lie to millions and millions and millions of people. And I don't know who you are, bro. I've never seen you in my chat before. I've never seen you supporting my content. So let's just be very, 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 very clear. I don't give a flying fuck what you think about it. If you don't like it, go somewhere else.
The state of Indiana, and this was back in the 50s. And he was, if Jim Jones had been hit by a bus in 1962, they moved out to the Bay Area in 1965. He would be remembered today as one of the early pioneers of the American Civil Rights Movement and like revered for it. He really would be, right? And so I started to read about this stuff, and I realized that there was this theme that was starting to emerge in all of my podcasts for the most part. In the Israel-Palestine one and this one, which is here's this guy who really is an idealist. And I'm not saying he didn't have pathologies, that were already inherent in there. Although I'm very suspicious of accounts whenever I'm reading a book about, and all of the Jim Jones biographies are like this, and you have to learn how to like read past it. But you're reading a book about Stalin, and the author went and found and interviewed somebody who was in 6th grade with him or something. And they're like, he got tripped on the playground one time and stood up and said, I'll get revenge on all of you one day. And that's when I knew. I'm very suspicious of all those stories, And so you have this guy who's a true idealist, and he could be, whether or not his politics were correct or whether his, was misguided, that's a separate question. He was an idealist. Like he really believed these things. He really did treat people in a way that in 1953 in America, was uncommon.
I kind of like how this guy is analyzing Jim Jones, because obviously Jim Jones, much like Hitler, is painted as a villain for what I think are obvious reasons. I mean, and obviously I don't think that revolutionary suicide is a good thing. I mean, obviously, like that's not cool. Like how it all ended is not cool. But like I kind of feel like this guy's talking about Jim Jones in the way that I talk about a lot of the socialists, and that like I want to emphasize that like they really think they're doing the right thing. They have humanity too, even if that humanity ends up going in a really flawed way, right? They're trying to do the right thing. They do care about people. There is something about them that other people genuinely love. They have an idealistic view of the world. I kind of like I like having this different perspective, because the reality is this, guys. There is no human being in the world that is all good or all bad. Every single person out there is a mix of good and bad. And so, like, we all do some things that are right. We all do some things that are wrong. We all have people that love us. We all have people that hate us. And I kind of like really respond well to this more nuanced perspective on this, to say like, listen, yeah, maybe it all went sideways, but like there was positive intent behind this, and like it wasn't all bad, and there was a reason things happened the way they did, and we should understand the nuance of that. Like it's a more balanced perspective. It's not like this gotcha bullshit that we're like ingrained with on social media like all the time, and it feels really good.
And so you have this idealist, just like with the in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict at the beginning. You read all the early accounts of the early Zionists, and it's all about it's soaring rhetoric about returning to the Holy Land, and there's people who have really grand idealistic visions of what it's going to be like when they get down there, and then people run into the rocks of reality, and how we respond to that pressure. Really defines the destiny of a movement and the people in it. And there are always going to be people and sometimes entire movements, that the pressure ends up, turning them off the road completely, and into a ravine. That's kind of what happened. So if you look at like the Jonestown story, the reason it turned into a 32-hour series is, like I said, they started in the 1950s doing stuff that you would recognize as just early civil rights stuff, boycotting a local business to get them to integrate. Right around the time, a few years before, but like that Martin Luther King was going to start that kind of thing. And then so you have Greensboro, you have these things. And their trajectory as an organization, the People's Temple, I realized, that trajectory from about 53 to 1978, when everything came to an end, that 25-year trajectory follows almost to the month. It is uncanny, like how perfectly it follows. It makes perfect sense because of how plugged into it they were. It follows the trajectory of the civil rights and protest movement in America through its rise, its peak, its radicalization, and then its decline in the late 60s and then into the 70s into insanity and death. And it is, it's almost you can tell the story of Jonestown and give a month by month account of that process, of those protest movements being radicalized and turning to violence and insanity in the 60s and 70s. And so it became a vehicle for that. And that's what really the story is about. It's about that period of American history from the mid 50s up until about 1980.
So how'd you like to cut your cell phone bill in half every single month? It's probably pretty high. Have you checked it recently?
No, don't care about cell phones, Tucker.
Never use and switch to Pure Talk on America's most dependable 5G network, $25 a month.
I like that it has like a
Pure Talk is proudly veteran-led, supports American jobs with their whole customer service team right here in the United States. Everyone speaks English. They're Americans. No offshoring. The average family saves almost $1,000 a year, $1,000 a year. No contract, no cancellation fees.
Rain, town. And you got to remember, a lot of first of all, 300 of those 1,000 or so people were kids. Another 300 to 400 were people over like 60 years old. Okay. So you can, that's who's out there. Fully 2/3 of the people who committed suicide out there were kids or senior citizens, right? And as they're approaching this point of just maximum paranoia, maximum group psychosis down there, and you listen to the recordings that they left for us, and they're just getting increasingly deranged. They're certain that the CIA is going to come and kidnap their children and put them through brainwashing. This is not just Jim Jones and his charisma telling these people this. These people understood themselves as a revolutionary movement, and they were true believers. Like, they were true believers, these people. A lot of people like to say that at the end it was basically murder. These people were forced to do this. These people were, at least for the vast majority of them, were not forced to do it. They believed in what they were doing. And Jim Jones by that point was almost like a figurehead of the movement, to be honest with you. He was just sort of the titular leader, but the movement, the organization was running itself. And you had a bunch of true believers who were out there trying to start the revolution and start a new society in the jungle. And in the last few months, when they're approaching just maximum psychosis and paranoia, you've got like Angela Davis, Huey Newton, Harvey Milk, like a lot of I think he got killed shortly after, who are literally calling into Jonestown and being put on the speaker for everybody to listen.
Really?
Saying, we know that the government is after you, and we just want you to know that we have your back, and there's just the whole world is coming after you, but we're there for you. We're on your side. This is a bunch of people who are like approaching a crisis point of paranoia and psychosis is going to lead to their mass death within a few months. And that's what these people are doing, calling in, just feeding into it. And, it makes me sick because you have people, and I know this wasn't maybe supposed to be just a Jonestown thing, but this topic, again, like it affected me a lot, right? There's this one woman, she was the lead singer of the Jonestown band. And the night before they all committed suicide, Leo Ryan, the congressman, was there, and his entourage was there, and they put on a performance, and there's a video.
His aide, Jackie Spear, who became a member of Congress herself. Yep.
And there's a video of that night. It was and they show a musical performance, and this woman who's the lead singer and band conductor is up there, and she's this African American woman, beautiful, great voice, up there, like really like confidently commanding the stage and like really in her element, right? Well, her backstory was back in Indianapolis. Jim Jones, when his family had lived there, knew her when she was a little girl, just a little bit. Like her mom came to the church sometimes, something like that. And after Jim Jones and his people left, she got abandoned by her mother. She ended up being pimped out by her drug dealer boyfriend when she was 15, 16 years old. And she's living her life on the streets, being beat up by this guy who's forcing her to go out and prostitute for him, and that's her life. And now she's about 20. She's committed suicide 3 or 4 times at this point. And now she's 20, and the Jonestown people make a trip back to Indianapolis because they would go around the country in their buses and, speak at churches and hold events and stuff. And so they go back there. And she just kind of knew who the Jones family was. She said they treated her with kindness and her mother with kindness when she was a little girl. And she's in the depth of suicidal depression, drug addiction, she's close to the end, right? And man, even in the podcast when I was recording, it makes me emotional because they got out there. She went there to the event when the Jonestown people came in because she just remembered that like these people had been kind to her 15 years ago, when she was a little girl. So she came out to see. And Jim Jones sees her and immediately recognizes her and starts talking to her, just, friendly, everything. The people like start talking to her and she starts telling them kind of about how her life's gone since that time. And he said, oh, well, great. Or he said, not great, but he said, oh, well, come with us, hop on the bus. Let's go. Like, we've got houses. We got a whole community out here. Like, we can find a job for you until you do something, whatever. Yeah, come on out. And so she did. And she went out there and they cleaned her up. They got her off drugs. They took this broken, destroyed, abused woman and put her in an environment where and again, you have to understand that even this psychotic movement, the way it turned out, this part was genuine. They put her into an environment where she felt like she belonged. And it really was, the people cared about her and she cared about the people there, And so she ends up being the band leader. She's like a super talented musician. And she's writing the songs. She's leading the practices for the band. She's the lead singer and everything. And, and she died out there with all the rest of them, with all the rest of those old people and kids and everybody else. She committed suicide with everybody else. The night after you see that video, where Ryan's out there.
It's amazing that you watched that video. I mean, I don't think I'd want to see something like that.
I had to.
Yeah, well, of course.
I had to. I have a rule, and I've broken this rule once, and it's probably an episode I'm just like least proud of, maybe. Although it's a lot of people's favorite episode. Like, I have a rule that I don't start a podcast until I feel like I can at least understand where everybody in this story is coming from. I didn't start the Israel-Palestine podcast until I felt like I could see how the Zionists saw things, how the Arabs saw things, how the British saw things, and how their behavior toward each other made sense to them in the context of their own world. And I did the same thing with Jonestown, which was a challenge because, talking about
I'm still waiting for the Holocaust denial. Where's the Why is this so offensive? I'm still waiting for like
to
the
their
good
deaths,
stuff.
in the jungle. They're meaningless deaths. There were literally people, Tucker, who, hundreds of people, parents who were injecting cyanide into their babies' mouths and watching them froth and twitch until they were sure they were dead, and then they could take the suicide drink themselves because they had done that. This is almost 1,000 people. It was one woman who was in the Capitol. She was at their office in the Capitol. She wasn't out at the actual compound. And when she got the call, like, it's time, we're doing it, she slashed her kids' throats and then stabbed herself in the heart. I mean, this is, and yet these people loved each other. These people actually did believe like in equality. They believed in like human brotherhood and all these things. And she slashed her kids' throats. And if you're going to tell a story like that, you can't do what all of the biographies of Jim Jones do. You know, they'll all talk about like these weird things about him as a kid and something where it was all there at the beginning, and it was just
I
the
respect
gradual,
this approach, I really
the
do.
gradual flowering and unfolding of this psychosis that had always been in there. And
wait, Jewish woman update. Jewish woman update. Hang on. Human Centipede is on the case. We have a Jewish woman update. Hold the presses. Stop the presses. Because God knows this has to take priority over everything else. Let's see the Jewish woman update. Look, you're shameless. How am I shameless? I am not the one that challenged the other person to a debate. I posted a clip of an interview that you did on the internet. I did not clip you out of context. I posted your complete words, and then I said, this Jewish woman said X, Y, B, and Z, which was an accurate quote of what you said. You're an out-in-the-open Jew hater who doesn't trust my people. I didn't say I didn't trust Jews. I just talked to Adam King, who's like the king fucking Jew, last night. I was up until 3 a.m. talking to Adam King. We had a great conversation, by the way. Adam King invited me to go to Israel, and I said, yes, Adam King, yes, I would be happy to go to Israel someday. And I really would. I actually do mean that, because I actually don't hate Jewish people. Just because you correctly point out that a Jewish person is in fact Jewish does not mean that you hate them. Yes, Adam King, who has a show on InfoWars banned video website, is indeed Jewish. He's very Jewish. He is extremely Jewish. He's very proud of being Jewish, and he's also a good guy, and he's a nice guy, and I actually like him. You know what? Because Adam King actually approaches me with, like, mutual respect and courtesy and, like, all that stuff. Unlike this Jewish woman, who seems to think the entire fucking world revolves around her. She challenges me to a debate publicly, and then she says, you're shameless for inviting me on your channel whenever I have time. How the fuck am I shameless? How the fuck am I a Jew hater? And when it comes to her people, no, I didn't say I didn't trust her people. I said that your people think they can control other people, but you don't get to set the rules on my channel. So why should I trust you? A little hypocritical, wouldn't you say? You know what, Jewish woman? You should trust me because you can literally go onto my channel and you can do your own research and you can watch the 2 streams that I've had with literal communists on my channel, and you can watch those streams and you can see that those communists were treated with respect and courtesy, and they were allowed to say what they wanted to say, and I told my audience to treat them with respect and courtesy. By the way, Jewish woman, you can also go and watch the interview that I did with Adam King, which is on his band.video website, where I spent like 2 hours shooting the shit with Adam King, and you can listen to the conversation I did with Adam King last night. You can even fucking ask Adam King about me. Why don't you slide into Adam King's DMs and be like, does this bitch really hate the Jews and should I trust her? And what Adam King is going to say if you do that is he's going to go, Carlin's awesome. Also, you don't actually have to come on my channel. For the record, I actually don't care if you come on my channel or not. I am not the one that challenged you to a debate. All I did was post a clip of you on the internet and have you melting down and triggered and all that stuff because I correctly pointed out that you're fucking Jewish. I don't watch your show and have no idea what kind of stunts you pull to one-up your guests. Well, isn't it convenient then, Jewish woman, that I literally have a massive archive of videos on my YouTube channel that are publicly available that you can actually just go and watch. All of this is out there. It's on video. It's not edited. It all airs live. you can do your own research and go and watch the videos. If I did watch your show, I'd feel more comfortable because I know what I was getting myself into. Then what the fuck is stopping you? It's public on the internet. But as of now, I know nothing. You may be totally genuine as you claim, or you may be full of BS. It is not my fault that you did not do your due diligence to research something before you challenged me to a debate. So if I'm going to come on, and you aren't actually afraid of having me, I've literally invited you twice now, which I'm sure you're not. Nope, I'm not. Then I look forward to a DM from you about how best to arrange this in a way that we both feel is on equal footing. No, you're not going to get a DM from me. You're going to get a public response from me because you are the one who started this, and then you can come into my DMs and you can give me a date when you can come on the show. If you don't do that, I am not putting any effort into this. You are what she's trying to do, this is exactly right. She is trying to weasel her way out of this because she started something and I called her ass out and now she doesn't want to do it and she's going to say, because the mean woman is a Jew hater. She's a Jew hater. She's a Jew hater because she called me Jewish. And quite frankly, we're not on equal footing. Just so we're crystal clear here. We are not on equal footing. I am on my channel where I will be in control of what happens. And if this Jewish bitch comes on my channel and starts to go off the rails or do something crazy, then I'm going to mute her or kick her off, and then she can have all the feelings she wants about that. But if she comes on and acts like a hooligan on my channel and starts insulting me, insulting other people, like, I'm not going to allow that shit to occur. No. We're not on equal footing. My channel is my channel. It's not yours. If you're not able to provide me with more than a verbal guarantee that neither of us will be edited or manipulated in any way, then I obviously won't subject myself to that. Bitch, I do a live stream. This Jewish woman is so stupid. I do a live stream. It is live on the internet. It is live. That means it's not edited. It happens live. People watch it live. Like, how is this woman existing in the world? But I'm sure there are lots of creative ways we could come up with to make sure this is equal. No, this is not equal. So I look forward to a DM from you. You're going to be waiting for a while. You're going to get a public response. You're not getting no fucking DM. You can come and ask me in my DMs because you're the one that started this. I'm going out of town tomorrow night and traveling until the end of this month, but I could set something up in October when I'm back home. All right. Let's respond to the Jewish woman. Let's respond to the Jewish woman. Let's respond to the Jewish woman. Got to get her up on my screen, on my phone. That way I can reference it on the screen. Hello, Jewish woman. I actually put bellow Jewish woman, which is not actually technically wrong. And then I'm tagging her. I am a live streamer. Therefore, no interviews are edited. They are live. That is what live streaming is. 2, I'm not the one who challenged you to a debate. You challenged me. I accepted and issued you an open invitation. It is on you to DM me and tell me when you want to do it. I'm not chasing you down and pleading with you to follow through on your, all capitals, request. I think I'm being more than accommodating already. That's going to turn into point number 3. Point number 2 is going to be, you've never watched my show? It's a good thing that all of my episodes are archived publicly for you to do your research. You probably should have done this before you challenged me to a debate. Regardless, you can find interviews that I've done with literal communists on my channel. You can also connect with King Jew. Tracy says, second time ever responding. I'm having a big glass of wine. You can also connect with King Jew. I'm tagging Adam King, who will inform you that your assumptions about me being a Jew hater are incorrect. You can also watch me on his show, which is on his InfoWars channel. What else should I say? Let's see. Number 4. We are not equal. And I don't want you to have that impression. You asked me for a debate. I made the decision to accommodate your request. You do not make the rules, excuse me, on my channel, and I don't really give a flying fuck if this happens or not, because I wasn't the one who demanded a debate like you guys are gonna love this, like a spoiled Jewish princess in the first place. I will look forward to your DM, and if you don't, I will just assume that you were never serious. In the first place. Period. Wait. Hugs and kisses. Carlin. Non-Jewish woman. Yeah, XOXO. Post. All right, that's enough tomfoolery. All right. I feel like someone owes me some super chats for this exchange alone. I feel like this is actually might even be more entertaining than this Tucker Carlson interview. All right, everyone calm down. We're coming back from Jewish woman banter. Everyone focus. Mount the like button. Let's keep going.
All these other people just got sucked into it. It's total nonsense. You really have to understand how people could get to a place like that from where they were. You know, everybody, doesn't matter who you're talking about. Uday Hussein. There was a time, and I always try to keep this in mind because, I mean, it's like it's one of the governing thoughts as I go through any of these stories. Uday Hussein, Joseph Stalin, I don't care who you're talking about. There was a time where that was a little 3-year-old kid.
That's right.
And they weren't evil. They weren't who they became. And so how did they become what they ended up being, you know?
So I think you're approaching this, which is why
Thank you,
I am
Nick.
so impressed by what you
Appreciate
do and want more people to experience it. You're approaching this from the most honest possible perspective and allowing readers, viewers, listeners to come to their conclusions
I
with the
appreciate this guy.
maximum amount of information. What you're not doing is using history as
A
a
weapon.
weapon,
Oh,
a cudgel,
look at that.
or as a
Tucker
kind of
knows.
propaganda
Tucker
tool to make
knows.
policy. So in that, you almost stand alone, I would say, right now.
No, I'm doing that too, Tucker.
I'm really interested in the project that you're working
Kinda.
on now. I'm a little bit baffled by it, so I'm just going to answer my own questions. So you were
you.
working on World War II,
World War
Mhm.
II.
which has
we
to
go.
be, even more than the Kennedy assassination, the most written about event in human history. I can't think of one that has occasioned more books. So why World War II?
Well, I was giving a talk
Hey,
to
Rebecca, super sticker. Thank you.
on a graduate history class at the University of Vienna a while back online, giving them a talk. And one of the things that I said to them, and I was curious how this was going to go over in Austria, but it seemed to go over all right, is I told them over the next few decades, like, look, anytime you have a historical event, for us in the United States, it's the civil rights movement, it's World War II, and to a certain degree, it's still the Civil War. Everything in between and before those things, you can do whatever you want. Doesn't matter. You think that the Russians were to blame for World War I and not the Germans. You think it was all British conspiracy. You can do whatever you want. It's fine. Because that's not part of the founding mythology of the order that we're all living in at this time, right? Those other things are. And whenever you have a historical event that is mythologized, and when I say that, I don't mean myth like that's a myth, that's a lie. That's not what I mean. I mean that it's a formative part of how we all understand the world we're in, or at least officially, like the official world, like that.
Yeah, the structures we live in.
Structures we live in. It's the justification for a lot of those structures,
Yes.
right? Whenever you have those things, you're going to have taboos. You're going to have certain ways that certain topics have to be talked about that are going to guarantee that topic is just profoundly misunderstood. And I told the students at the University of Vienna, I said, over the next couple decades, like we're going to get to a point where the interwar period and the Second World War are far enough away that people can actually start taking a more honest look at everything that went on. And it is going to be the most fruitful place that any aspiring historian can dive into, because we've spent the last 70 years, I mean, in Europe's case, like literally throwing people in jail for looking into the wrong corners, right? So there's and even
particularly in Austria. I can say.
Right. And so even in the United
Which was
States,
an invaded country, so I'm not exactly sure why it's so important.
yeah,
Well, I mean,
it's a big topic, but I mean, even the United States, where you're not going to go to jail necessarily for doing that. You might have your life ruined and lose your job.
You might absolutely go to jail in this country.
Nowadays, you might, yeah. But you could write a book. You could take any angle on it you want. You're not going to ever get a job or have a publisher want to publish it or anything, but you could do it. You can go out on the street corner and stand on a box and say whatever it is you think. But even still, that event is really it's such a core part of the state religion that there are emotional triggers built into people since childhood that almost prevent them from taking an approach that would
because we are traumatized with Holocaust propaganda in school as children. They traumatize us as children. And of course, the Holocaust happened exactly as they said they did, and no less than exactly 6,000,001 Jews died. And I'm not questioning any of that. I'm just saying that it's a pretty fucked up thing to do to make kids, when they're really young, watch videos of that because it traumatizes them. Even if it's true and happened exactly like they said it did, it's still traumatizing.
That might lead them to information or to conclusions that are not part of the state religion's version of that event, And again, you're going to find that. I'm sure the Peloponnesian Wars were like that for the ancient Greeks.
Well, that's absolutely right. Well, by the way, the American Revolution, which is now totally irrelevant to modern America, unfortunately, was like that. The life of Lincoln was like that. Lincoln was very complicated guy. It's not an endorsement of slavery. Well, speaking for myself, I think slavery is disgusting. It's the worst thing. What you're saying is absolutely right. It's not just the Second World War that is sort of uniquely censored or protected. The mythology around it, it's every event that's central to a nation's understanding of itself, and then that changes over time. So do you think that we are far enough away, 80 years from that war, where you can try to take as an objective a look as you can, and that will be allowed?
No, I don't. I think we've got a little ways to go on that, but I hope I can kind of start to break the ice a little bit, because like here's the problem with doing something like that. And this is something I'm very aware of as I research it and start to work on the project, is that when you have a mythologized historical event that is told, again, you go to a lot of places in Europe, it's a legal requirement. Over here, it's not quite that, but it almost might as well be where that this event is going to be described from a certain perspective. You're going to approach it a certain way. There are just certain things you're not allowed to question. You have to
literally, it's a crime to ask questions.
Right.
Yes.
Then whenever that's the case, when you try to add any type of balance to that account, when you try to tell the story in a way that brings other approaches and other perspectives into it, it's going to look like you're trying to justify those other things. That's just how it's going to seem to people who are very locked into this side. And so if you start talking about the interwar period and how the Weimar culture, after the First World War led to something like the rise of the National Socialists, and why the people who embraced that movement did embrace it in a way that's not just, was because they were, you had this country, Germany, a sophisticated cultural, superpower.
I think we're going to be doing something controversial tonight. I'm feeling the need to watch some banned content tonight. I've got a movie called, Marching to Zion. Has anyone seen that movie? Fluffy Cow Respecter, I bet you have. I think we're going to be doing something controversial tonight. We're going to do that on my Rumble channel. That's rumble.com/Carlin. Just because, this is getting me in the mood to watch some banned content.
But that was fine, and then they all turned into demons for a few years, and now they're fine again. Like, that's sort of the official story. And I think deep down we all know that makes no sense. Everything has a cause. Again, to go back, like Uday Hussein got to be Uday Hussein from that 3-year-old little kid. Jim Jones got to be Jim Jones from being that guy who was just an earnest local Indianapolis civil rights activist. They all got to be those people that led to the chaos that they eventually invited into the world and onto themselves and their people through their experiences in the world, and through a series of decision points that at the time, if you can bring yourself to step into the shoes of those people. And it's not a comfortable thing to do. I mean, when I literally listened to probably 2,000 hours of Jim Jones's sermons and him screaming at his people and just going insane to the point where I was dreaming about this guy. For months, I would have my headphones in as I was working.
Did he actually publish those? Because I would actually like to listen to those sermons.
Listening to Jim Jones. And it's really hard. Yeah, I know.
Were you the only guy in the office doing that?
I think I'm probably the only person in the world that's done that. And so like, and I got to the point where I felt like I knew this guy. I could notice from tape to tape, I would hear changes in his tone of voice. And I knew whether he was high on amphetamines that day, or if he had taken his barbiturates already. And now I felt like I knew this guy. And their tapes, by the way, they're not all from like 1 year. They're from like 15, 20 years, right? So you can watch this process of a descent into madness as it's happening. And, you know, to get to a point where you can bring yourself to step into the shoes of any other human being and understand that as much as, you know, as much as it makes you uncomfortable, it is just a human being. And at the very, very like base level, their motivations are the same as yours. Their needs are the same as yours. But that we're a multivariate species that can go a lot of different directions, right?
Oh, they're on YouTube?
And,
we gotta
and to
watch
be able
those.
to do that and force yourself to do it is the key. And so when you do something like that with, I mean, again, like a historical event like World War II, where, I mean, the one rule is that you shall not do that. You shall not look at this topic and try to understand how the Germans saw the world. Like how the whole thing from the First World War on up to the very end of the war, how these people might have genuinely felt like they were the ones under attack, that they were the ones being victimized by their neighbors and by all these, by the Allied powers, you know, and you can handle that with a sentence. You know, you can wave it off and say, well, you know, they're justifying themselves or they're rationalizing their evil or whatever you want to say. But again, I think we're getting to the point where that's very unsatisfying for people.
Most of us, well, actually all of us, go through our daily lives using all sorts of, quote, free technology without paying attention to why it's, quote, free.
Neighbors.
Email.
Hang on. Back it up. Back
Yes.
it up. Back it up. There we go.
More than unsatisfying. I mean, it's childish and shallow, of course.
Hold on. Sorry to interrupt, but that's true. But every society has founding myths.
100%.
And you need them, you know, like, I don't think that we're necessarily better off now that people are able to just freely tear down a statue of George Washington because he was a slave owner, right?
Agree.
And so like there are sacred symbols and national
Well, that's
myths.
actually a good point because I also have videos on the Nuremberg trials that I do want to watch. Maybe we should do that tonight. I don't know. We're gonna watch something related to we're gonna watch something related to that tonight.
That any group of people are going to need to hold themselves together.
And there's also peril in knowing the truth about things. I mean, when we finally find out how President Kennedy was murdered in 1963, when we finally find out what all these weird lights in the sky are at night, when we really get to the truth of that, will we be better off or not? I mean, those are fair questions. I don't know the answer. But let me just say what I completely agree with you. Particularly any unifying myth, is important. I'm just highly distressed by the uses to which the myths about World War II have been put in the context of modern foreign policy, particularly the war in Ukraine. But not just the war in Ukraine, so many others, Churchill's the good guy, Neville Chamberlain's the bad guy. It's too pat. It's obviously quite banal. But it also has justified like the killing of millions of people since the end of the Second World War. And so I do think it's fair to ask like what really was going on. So for example,
what was really going on?
I'm American. I'm not English, so I don't have any weird motive in asking this, but how would you assess Winston Churchill?
I got in trouble with my podcast partner, Jocko Willink, one time because he's a New England Dutchman whose his family, it's near and dear to they're Dutch, but very near and dear to their heart that Winston Churchill is a hero, right?
Well, everyone
thinks that. He really thinks that. And I told him that I think, and maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic, maybe, But I told him, maybe trying to provoke him a little bit, that I thought Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War. Now, he didn't kill the most people. He didn't commit the most atrocities. But I believe, and I don't really think, I think when you really get into it and tell the story.
I don't agree with that. Sorry. Disavow.
Right,
I don't agree.
And don't leave
Churchill was a
anything
hero.
out. You see that he was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did, becoming something other than an invasion of Poland. Or just, I mean, at every step of the way, like people are very often, I find, surprised to learn. There's a two-step process.
The reason I say that is I just think that Winston Churchill could have probably done more to stop the war than he in fact did. I think Winston Churchill probably could have ended the war if he had wanted to, like way early on. All those times that it was offered to end the war. And maybe millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of less people would have died had Churchill actually done that. And that's important, I think.
That's
well,
right.
why don't you just make the case for that? Okay, so you've made your statement. A lot of people are thinking, well, wait a second. You said Churchill, my childhood hero, the guy with the cigar.
Yeah. Well, and the next thought that comes into their head is that, oh, you're saying Churchill was the chief villain, therefore his enemies, you know, Adolf Hitler and so forth, were
Stalin,
the protagonists, right?
Yeah.
That they're the good guys if you think he's a villain. That's not the case. That's not what I'm saying. You know, Germany, look, they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war, of local political prisoners and so forth that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that. And they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there. You know, you have like letters as early as July, August 1941 from commandants of these makeshift camps that they're setting up for these millions of people who are surrendering or people they're rounding up. And so it's 2 months after, a month or two after Barbarossa was launched. And they're writing back to the high command in Berlin saying, we can't feed these people. We don't have the food to feed these people. And one of them actually says, rather than wait for them all to slowly starve this winter, wouldn't it be more humane to just finish them off quickly now? And so this is like 2 months into the invasion, right? And like my view on this, you know, I argue with my Zionist interlocutors about this all the time with regard to the current war in Gaza. Look, man, like maybe you, as the Germans, you felt like you had to invade to the east. Maybe you thought that Stalin was such a threat, or that if he launched a surprise attack and seized the oil fields in Romania, that you would now not have the fuel to actually respond, and you'd be crippled, and all of Europe would be under threat, and whatever it was, that like maybe you thought you had to do that.
Angel Eyes. Late fee again. I'm glad you're playing this. I didn't yet. Thank you, Angel Eyes. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I'm feeling very disappointed in this interview because, like, this guy just seems like a reasonable guy. And it's actually probably better, like, for my YouTube channel that this guy is, like, a reasonable guy. But, like, what is the problem with this exactly? I mean, I understand that he's saying some things that might make people feel uncomfortable. I think he's saying some things that might challenge what people have been told before. But, like, the amount of hysteria that has been created based purely on the fact that Tucker Carlson talked to this person, and he seems like a reasonable guy, and he seems to be pretty balanced in his approach, and it's like, now you have the conservative establishment rebelling against Tucker Carlson and struggle sessioning him and calling him the woke right. This is a completely disproportional reaction, and I mean, listen, we're only partway through this interview. Maybe it gets worse. Yeah, according to, like, mainstream conservatives, you would think that this guy was, like, a raging Jew hater and that Tucker Carlson was, like, a major Holocaust denialist. Is that a word, denialist? Did I just make up that word? Maybe. Like, you would think that, you know, that this was much worse than it actually was. Oh, the Jewish woman says she saw some really accurate and balanced criticism of this. Listen, man, I'm only giving her a hard time because she's being a pain in the ass. I actually would be nice to that woman. I'm not going to be a bitch to anyone, but, like, She is being a pain in the ass. She started out the whole interaction by insulting me. Like, yeah, this is like COVID. It's like, it's not that big a deal. People like James Lindsay think they have the answers to stopping humans from behaving as humans. Humans have always been at each other's throats since our existence. Hey, ain't that the truth, Tayton? Ain't that the truth? All right, well, let's keep going. Let's see if anything more controversial comes up.
But at the end of the day, you launched that war with no plan to care for the millions and millions of civilians and prisoners of war that were going to come under your control. And millions of people died because of that, right? And you can look at it and say, like, you know, well, yeah. So get back to your main question about Churchill. You know, if you go to 1939, when the Germans and the Soviet Union invade Poland, as soon as that war's wrapped up on the German side, Hitler starts firing off peace proposals to Britain and France because they had already declared war. He didn't expect them to declare war, actually. Like, there's a famous scene where he kind of throws a fit when he finds out that they did do that. And so he doesn't want to fight France. He doesn't want to fight Britain. He feels that's going to weaken Europe when we've got this huge threat to the east, the communist threat over there. And he starts firing off peace proposals. He says, let's not do this. Like, we can't do this. And of course, a year goes by, 1940 comes around, and they're still at war. And so he launches his invasion to the west, takes over France, takes over Western and Northern Europe. Once that's done, and the British have, escaped at Dunkirk, there's no British force left on the continent. There's no opposing force left on the continent. In other words, the war is over, and the Germans won. Okay,
by what point?
Fall of 1940, right? So there's literally no opposing force on the continent. And throughout that summer, Adolf Hitler is firing off radio broadcasts, giving speeches, literally sending planes over to drop leaflets over London and other British cities, trying to get the message to these people that
Now we're starting to see the problem, aren't we? This guy is being honest that Hitler tried to stop the war. I mean, obviously this didn't happen. Obviously, this guy's totally making this stuff up. I'm sorry. I had a momentary lapse in judgment there. Obviously, none of this stuff happened, but like, let's just live in the land of make-believe for a second. What does it mean if Hitler, in this make-believe alternative... This is, you know what? This is like the Man in the High Castle. This is like the Man in the High Castle where we are living in an alternative timeline. It's not real. We're in an alternative timeline. And in this alternative timeline, Hitler has made every fucking effort to get Churchill to stop the war. What does that mean? What does that mean? Because I was personally always taught that, like, Hitler was bent on world domination, that he wanted to conquer the entire world, that we needed to take him out because he was going to continue to expand his empire until he took over the entire world. And so, how can you reconcile that Hitler, in this alternative fantasy universe, wanted to stop the war? In this alternative fantasy universe, that means on some level that Churchill wanted the war to continue. That Churchill had a reason for wanting the war to continue, and that maybe all the things said about Hitler in that regard were just propaganda. But of course, everything else that they ever said about Hitler was true, obviously and clearly, because again, this is a made-up alternative universe, right? Yeah, Hitler was a bloodthirsty madman that wanted world domination. I mean, this is just like common knowledge. I don't know what the hell this guy's talking about. Why would Hitler want to end the war? Just like go back a little bit and just listen again.
left on the continent. In other words, the war is over and the Germans won. Okay.
But by what point?
Fall of 1940, right? So there's literally no opposing force on the continent. And throughout that summer, Adolf Hitler is firing off radio broadcasts, giving speeches, literally sending planes over to drop leaflets over London and other British cities, trying to get the message to these people that Germany does not want to fight you. Like, we don't want to fight you. Offering peace proposals that, it said, you keep all your overseas colonies. We don't want any of that. We want Britain to be strong. The world needs Britain to be strong, especially as we face this communist threat and so forth. Like, this is what's going on. And I think that if there were people in Britain who, if they hadn't put it this way, if they hadn't been so successful at delegitimizing the peace approach by demonizing Neville Chamberlain and so forth, and holding him responsible for the invasion of Poland, that people would have been, they would have understood, like, we don't need a repeat of the First World War. We don't, which is not what ended up happening, but that's what everybody thought was going to happen. And so Churchill, you have a guy, Churchill wanted a war. He wanted to fight Germany. And the reason that I don't begrudge him that, people can, national leaders, you can fight whoever you want. If you feel like your the long-term interests of the British Empire are threatened by the rise of a powerful continental power like Germany, and you need to check that those are great power games, and you play them the way you feel like you need to play them. That's fine. The reason I resent Churchill so much for it is that he kept this war going when he had no way to go back and fight this war. All he had were bombers. He was literally, by 1940, sending bomber fleets to go firebomb the Black Forest, just to burn down sections of the Black Forest, just rank terrorism, going through and starting to, what eventually became just the carpet bombing, the saturation bombing of civilian neighborhoods, to kill, is the purpose of which was to kill as many civilians as possible. And all the men were out in the field. All the fighting age men were out in the field. And so this is old people, it's women and children, and they knew that. And they were wiping these places out. It was as gigantic scaled terrorist attacks, the greatest, scale of terrorist attacks you've ever seen in world history.
Why would he do that?
Because it was the only means that they had to continue fighting at the time. They didn't have the ability to reinvade Europe.
Hang on.
And so he needed
I
to keep...
I just want to listen to this part again. I apologize. I hate that Twitter makes it so hard for me to rewind, but I just want to listen to this one more time.
For us, just rank terrorism, going through and starting to, what eventually became just the carpet bombing, the saturation bombing of civilian neighborhoods, to kill, is the purpose of which was to kill as many civilians as possible.
True.
And all the men were out in the field. All the fighting age men were out in the field. And so this is old people, it's women and children, and they knew that. And they were wiping these places out. It was as gigantic scaled terrorist attacks, the greatest, scale of terrorist attacks you've ever seen in world history.
Why would he do that?
Because it was the only means that they had to continue fighting at the time. They didn't have the ability to reinvade Europe. And so he needed to keep this war going until he accomplished what he hoped to accomplish. We know now there's actually a really great series of books. It's one of the best. I recommend it to everybody, but it's really expensive now. And it's 6 long volumes called History of British Special Operations in the Second World War. And one of the books gets into the level of just the extent of media operations, propaganda operations, everything that they were running in the United States to eventually drag us into that war. And that
They were running propaganda. Britain was running propaganda in the United States to drag us into the war. You don't say. You don't say. You mean Churchill dragged us into the war by lying to the American population through propaganda? Obviously that didn't happen. Obviously we are still in the alternate timeline.
That was his whole plan. His whole plan was we don't have a way to fight this war ourselves. This war is over. We need either the Soviet Union or the United States to do it for us. And that was the plan. And kept the war going long enough for that plan to come to fruition. And to me, it's a craven, ugly way to fight a war. And
what was the motive?
He doesn't want to say.
Churchill's got a long and complicated history. I mean, he's somebody who
that was the wryest smile I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to talk about it.
I think on one level,
This poor poor guy.
There was a sense that Churchill was sort of humiliated by his performance in the First World War as the head of the Admiralty, and he was out in the cold for a long time.
I mean, Gallipoli.
Yeah, and which that was his operation.
Yeah,
I mean, and so he was rightly held responsible for that and seen as responsible for one of the great disasters that the British suffered during that war. And so I think part of it was probably kind of personal. He wanted redemption. He wanted to go out there and like prove that he's the warlord that they can go out there and fight this big war. Probably. I think part of it,
I mean, Churchill did have one ginormous ego. Like, I remember, and listen, I know The Crown is not based on real life. I know that's not based on real life, but there are some stories in The Crown that are based on real life, and so I remember there's this one. It's at the end of the first season, I believe, of The Crown, where it might be the second season. I'm pretty sure it's the end of the first season. It might be at the end of the second season, but like, basically, they wanted to gift Winston Churchill with this portrait of himself, and they made this whole episode about the painting of this portrait of Winston Churchill, and he was older at this point, and it basically, like, this guy was like a world famous portrait guy. He only paints 2 portraits a year because that's how much detail he puts into it and all this stuff. And basically the portrait came out and Winston Churchill kind of looked like an old man who was not very impressive. He was like slumped in his chair a little bit. And there was a grand unveiling at his birthday party. And the rumor is Churchill was like so horrified by the state of this portrait that he stole it and burned it, because the portrait was never seen again after that. And it's kind of like it's kind of like you see how like important like image is to him. And like, I mean, again, like The Crown is a fictional show, so there's a lot of things in The Crown that aren't real, but it's a really good show. But it's like the point is like you see how important image is to him and presentation and stuff like that. And there are all sorts of these stunts that Churchill pulled to like, prop himself up and appear a certain way to the public. And so you can totally buy into this idea that Churchill was very kind of like concerned with his public perception and coming off as a, strong man and like a certain way, kind of like red pill men now and stuff like that.
Read about Churchill and he strikes me as a psychopath. But he's also
he's
a
also
sort of,
broke
he was a
and
drunk.
well,
he
that's
was
good
very
information, Alex.
childish in strange ways. People would talk about how, as an adult,
Allegedly.
as prime minister, they'd find him in his room and he's like playing with action figures like war toys and army men and stuff, and would get mad when people would interrupt him, when he was doing this. This is a strange fellow, There's all those things. But then you get into, why was
yeah, the British family was of German descent way before World War II. That was way before World War II, bro. That was before World War I. Like, Queen Victoria married like, oh, what's his name? Fucking what the hell was Victoria's husband's name? I am forgetting. How am I forgetting Victoria's husband's name? What was Victoria's husband? I should know this. What the fuck was Victoria's husband's name? No, it wasn't Edward. No. Albert. Thank you. I knew it started with an A. I was thinking Arthur in my head. I'm like, it's not Arthur. Albert. Albert was of Saxe-Coburg. So that was before World War I. So there was the German descent for the British royal family started way before the World Wars, bro. Come on.
Winston Churchill such a dedicated booster of Zionism from early on in his life, right? And there's ideological reasons. Like in 1920, he wrote a kind of infamous now article called Zionism versus Bolshevism. And he basically makes the case that, which was true to a large extent, that all of Eastern Europe, the Pale of Settlement, which is where the vast majority of Jews lived, other than the United States, which is where a lot of them had traveled to, that area had become so engulfed by a revolutionary spirit that all the young Ashkenazi Jews who were over there were getting swept up into it. It was the 60s here on steroids, right? And in a much more serious and ended up being destructive way. And this is 1920, so this is shortly after the Bolshevik Revolution. Basically, the point of his paper is he says these people who are over there, they're all going one direction or the other. They're going to be Bolsheviks. They're going to be Zionists. We want them to be Zionists, you know, and so we need to support this. And so that was early on. There was an ideological component of it. But then as time goes on, you know, you read stories about Churchill going bankrupt and needing money, getting bailed out by people who shared his interests, you know, in terms of Zionism, but also
getting bailed out by people who shared his interests after he went bankrupt.
also
Oh shit.
his hostility, just you know, I think his hostility to put it this way, I think his hostility to Germany was real. I don't think that he necessarily had to be bribed to have that feeling.
Yes.
But
Bankers.
you know, I think he was to an extent put in place by people, the financiers, by a media complex that wanted to make sure that he was the guy who, you know, who was representing Britain in that conflict for a reason. And you know, Churchill's a again, it's so hard because, like, you know, and especially in a short interview like this where you have this guy who, I mean, he's an Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Martin Luther King like type figure in the sort of Western consciousness, right?
Yes.
And so people have so many assumptions and built-in triggers, like when it comes to this guy, that it's hard to talk about him because you're always thinking about the triggers that you're setting off and your listeners. And I don't say that in a way of like, oh, I don't want to offend anybody.
No,
or whatever.
I understand.
It's that it's you know that things are going to be misunderstood.
Eberific! Thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate you. Thank you, guys. Please mount the like button, guys, if you would be so kind. We stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. We are doing Socialism Saturday tomorrow at 6 p.m. I appreciate everyone.
And so this is why I do 30-hour podcasts.
Well, it's interesting because I, you know, as a follower of your work, I don't see you as hostile to the West. I see you actually as a product of the West and as a defender, really, of the West or its values. You know, in your approach, in your open-mindedness, rigor, you know, belief in accuracy and honesty.
Dub,
those are West.
You're seriously spouting incoherent nonsense in my chat. The royal family doesn't rule anything. The royal family is a figurehead of state. The royal family doesn't really have any authority. So calm the fuck down.
Notions. And yet Churchill has been positioned and has been really is accepted as like the defender of the West over the last 100 years.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's, and I wonder why that is. I mean, people can certainly take issue with any factual claims you're making. I assume they're all right. They're consistent with what I think I know to be true. But why do you think Churchill has been presented in the way that he has?
Yeah, well, it has to do with what you said earlier, right? Neville Chamberlain versus Churchill has been the binary model that has served as the chief rhetorical device for every conflict we've wanted to get into since then.
Yes.
You know, the entire Cold War, and then even after the Cold War, in the global war on terror, is if you appease them, you're Neville Chamberlain. Hitler's Churchill's the one who saw all along where this was headed and was trying to warn people, this, you know, Cassandra. And finally, because nobody listened to him, the war ended up breaking out and we were forced to like go stamp out this threat. And now it's a much bigger threat than it ever would have been if we just would have listened to him.
If we had strangled it in its crib.
And it's justified every conflict, you know, really since the Second World War. Everybody's the new Hitler, right? And so that it's very valuable in that sense. But then also, you know, it really did become the founding myth of the global order that we're all living in now, right? Like, because when you think about, like, if you go back to think about like in Machiavelli's The Prince, right? And he starts that book out kind of talking about why he's writing this book. And one of the things that he says in there is, Italy is a bunch of broken up little principalities and city states and stuff. And he's looking over to the west and the north and seeing countries like Spain, countries like France and England, who like these are countries that are now starting to operate on a totally different scale, like on a national something
as nation states.
scale. And we have got to get our act together and start learning how to act on that level as well. And so that's why I'm writing this book. It's an instruction manual and like a call to action kind of. Well, as that goes on and the nation state starts to put itself together in the modern era, you get to World War I, and you think about what the nation state is, right? Like history, and to a large extent, global event style history, is governed to a great degree by the military technology that's prevalent at a given time, right? So, like, I don't think it's an accident, for example, that the ancient Greeks had like a feeling of like citizen equality that was unprecedented in the world at the time, and they had their chief combat system was the phalanx unit,
right?
That required every man to stand by his fellow citizen as a unit, and that's what their position in the world depended on people being able to do that. I don't think that's a mistake, right? I don't think it's a mistake when you look at other societies where charioteers, really expensive bronze chariots, or when you get to like the high Middle Ages, where the heavy horse cavalry is just totally dominant on the battlefield, but so only the people who can afford that kind of a weapon system, they're the ones who are going to rule, and the people who don't like it, they really don't have any means to sort of express their own political will. And so as the nation state starts to get put together, you start to have military conflicts and just military buildups on a scale that nobody's ever heard of before. I mean, you get to the First World War, I mean, millions and millions of men. And if you want to operate on that level, if you want to operate on the level of great game global politics, you got to be able to put an army of several million men in the field, and it's why countries who tried their hand at imperialism, like the Dutch and the Belgians, eventually they were just like, we're not doing it. And it's because they saw that. And so, when you look at the First World War and the Second World War, but really the First World War is like the apotheosis of the nation state in a lot of ways, where you have, if you think back to like an old king in the early modern period, or even, no, forget about that. Look at like Louis XIV. So the Sun King, right? Powerful as any monarch in Europe, like for hundreds of years. His actual ability to reach into the local affairs of some village and tell people how to act or what to think.
Pretty limited.
Very limited. Like we think, because of movies and TV, that a monarch is sitting on his throne and he just orders this and it happens, like God saying, "Let there be light" or something.
Behead him, yes.
Yeah. And it's just, they didn't have that kind of reach. They had influence, and but they had like any modern individual politician, they had to work through existing structures and systems to get their will actually carried out. And that meant making compromises, and they just didn't have the resources to technological resources, but also just human and financial resources to get down to the granular level of control that would become common with the rise of the nation state. And so you get up to the point where, when the nations face off in World War I, and you have countries that, I mean, when you look at the level of efficient mobilization toward a single cause, fighting the war, how the economy, how the government, everybody was on the same page. And, they were fighting this war as whole societies. Like they figured out a way that they could do what Louis XIV could never dream of. They could mobilize their whole society for war. And that was what you had to do if you wanted to compete on the level of Germany and France and so forth. And so what somebody like Churchill during the First World War, and probably actually the Second World War as well, most people, I think, players in the Second World War, what they thought they were doing was that this was a war between nation states, like World War I and so on and so forth. And it was not that. And we found out afterwards that it was not that there were two great military land empires, multi-ethnic, multiracial, multicultural military land empires, the Soviet Union and the United States, and when I say empire, obviously, like, we don't think of the U.S. pre-World War II in that way very much, but we didn't start out with a whole continent under our control, right? We started out as 13 colonies, and we grew through a confrontation with and centuries-long race war against the natives, right? I mean, that's really, it was the formative experience of America in its early history.
Just for
and so it's an
fluffy cow
empire in a way,
respecters.
not the way we normally it's not like the British Empire, but I think you can call it that. And these two countries, that thing that Machiavelli was noticing when he's looking over at Spain and France, you actually had, like, Germany, for example. There's this idea that the only reason that they did Molotov-Ribbentrop was because, Hitler needed to buy time so he could eventually invade the Soviet Union later or something like that. Not exactly true. I mean, that obviously he was talking about the eventual conflict with the Soviet Union very early in his career.
good.
That was there.
Not as good
But
as
by the time
normal
you get
one,
up
but it's
to
still
like
pretty good.
1939, his views are starting to become more complicated on it, where he's starting to see
It's more
the
dry.
United States as the real chief threat to not just to Germany, but to Europe, because he saw himself as the sort of European defender, Messiah guy, right? So, and he looks over at Joseph Stalin and says, and a lot of his people kind of thought this way, that this is not an international communist movement anymore. Like,
Yes.
Trotsky's been banished from the country, and his followers are all dead. They were killed during the purges of the late 30s. These people are all gone. Those are all of the people who, from the very beginning, after the First World War, they saw Russia as the fountainhead of world revolution. And Stalin, he never quite gave that up. Just like the United States, he saw it as his duty to build up ideologically aligned allies and so forth. But if you really look at what happened, and a lot of the Germans saw it this way, Stalin, what he did was kind of turn the Soviet Union into like a national socialist nation state, really. He kind of brought back the Russian Empire, and now it's called communist and stuff, but there's no goal to just set off global revolution. And then once that happens, the chips will fall where they may.
They kept inside the Kremlin, they kept all the paintings of St. George, the patron saint of Russia, all the crosses, the whole Stalin period, they're there.
And I have I have nothing good to say about Stalin.
I don't either, but I don't think it's been misadvertised a little bit.
Yeah. And when I said that there's one episode that I have done where I feel like I didn't do my duty to force myself to understand the perspective of the perpetrators, it was the one that I did about the Soviet conquest of Eastern Europe after the Second World War and what they did in Germany and other places, and specifically Romania, which is, as far as I can tell, like, so far after 30 years of reading history books, is pretty much the worst thing that ever happened. These prison experiments that they ran in Pitești and other places in Romania after the Second World War are that's not family listening. If you really want to,
The Soviets did.
Yeah, the Soviet advisors were there. It was carried out technically by the Securitate and the Romanians themselves, but this was a program being run from Moscow, right? And it's whatever you're thinking it is out there, whoever's listening or watching this, it's 1,000 times worse. And I wouldn't recommend going and listening to my episode, The Anti-Humans, unless you're prepared for that. So I'll just leave it at that. But I'll say, like, in that one,
Now
like, I couldn't bring myself to I couldn't put myself in the shoes of the people who were doing those things. And I didn't really try, and it comes across much more polemical than any of my other work. And a lot of people love it because it does, expose a lot of the crimes that happened during that period and stuff. But I think
it's hard sometimes. I'll tell you one thing. I'm not a Stalin expert. I don't speak Russian, but I have read about Stalin my whole life. And one thing that I was very surprised to learn, that it came out right after the everything collapsed in 91, and a British historian, a Russian speaker, got access to a lot of the Stalin archives, the personal archives. And I was amazed to read in this book, Court of the Red Tsar, amazing book.
that is a great book.
It is a great book.
Yeah.
But the thing that it overturned, I mean, I'm older than you, so maybe you always knew this, but growing up, we didn't. Everyone thought Stalin was this bloodless technocrat, not a true believer at all. That was Lenin. Was certainly Trotsky seemed like a true believer. Zinoviev, Kamenev, all the guys around him might have been, but he was not. And you learn in reading this, so he was actually a devout, like religious level communist, which either makes him more repulsive or less, depending. I could see it from either side, but it's definitely not what we thought he was. And what I loved about that was your view of something. It's a small thing, I guess, for most people. It was a big thing for me to learn that. But your whole kind of accepted view of something can turn out to be utterly false. Like a lot of history is just completely fake.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny that Stalin was really just like a really devoted, true believer communist, and he thought he was doing the right thing, and he was absolutely committed to it, and a lot of people don't understand that, and I agree that that's a really interesting like thing about history is like you learn about history in school and they teach you one thing and you become committed to that thing because it's the first thing that you learn, and that's actually one of the bitches of this whole thing, right? Is like oftentimes the first thing people learn is the thing that sticks with them and the thing they become committed to. It doesn't even matter if it's true or not. It's like the first time someone this is why smear campaigns usually tend to be effective, because like someone goes and they start going, do you know Nick Fuentes is a horrible person and he's a neo-Nazi and he's really bad and he's all these things and he is gay and he's all these things and Nick Fuentes is the worst person ever for reason X, Y, B, and Z. And if that person has never heard of Nick Fuentes before, like that person might be like on part of them, it might be like, oh, I don't really care, like I don't even know who that is, but that's the introduction to that person. That's the first time they've ever heard about it, and so like in their head is always going to be like the only time I've ever heard about this guy, I've heard him talk about as like a horrible person or whatever. The same is true of anything in history. So like if you're in say like school and the school teaches you something about history or your teacher teaches you something about history, it kind of doesn't even matter if that thing is true or not. You are going to become committed to that thing. And then if someone tries to contradict that, even if they have evidence and like primary sources, you're still going to have like an emotional connection to that thing because that thing has like embedded itself in its psyche. And so isn't it funny for Tucker to say that, really, it's possible to learn new things about history that prove that everything you thought you knew was completely false and fake and just not real. And, of course that's not true about the Holocaust. Everything they said about the Holocaust was 100% real. Hitler was the worst person that ever lived, and the Holocaust is the worst event in the history of humanity, and not less than 6,000,001 Jews died in the Holocaust. And they were gassed in gas chambers that had wooden doors and still worked, which was really a miracle. It was really a miracle of God that those gas chambers, because like wooden doors aren't necessarily, but you know what? They worked it out. And so everything we know about the Holocaust is true. Everything we learned in schools about the Holocaust is true. There is nothing that we learned that is false. Hitler was the worst person that ever lived by far. It's not even close. You shouldn't say a nice thing about him. He had no redeeming qualities at all. He definitely was not fighting Marxists. That's just completely untrue. And but like everything else about history is because Tucker's talking about Stalin, right? He's talking about Stalin. And, obviously maybe we should rethink that, but other things about history, like Hitler, are completely not, that was completely, we were told the truth about that. Let's just listen to that part again, because I just love watching Tucker's reaction to that.
It's a small thing, I guess, for most people. It was a big thing for me to learn that. But your whole kind of accepted view of something can turn out to be utterly false. A lot of history is just completely fake.
Your whole accepted view of something can turn out to be utterly false. Everything you know about history is completely fake, except for the Holocaust, which is 100% real and true, and no less than 6,000,001 Jews died in the Holocaust via gas chamber with wooden doors. Obviously, that's exactly what happened.
And so when you see someone who's diving in
Yep.
face,
Yeah, the media, the media needed to take a break because concocting like falsehoods and stories and narratives, it takes a lot of energy. I think we can all agree on that. Sometimes you just need to take a vacation. And World War II, they told us the truth about everything just because it was like easier to do so. And they went right back to lying to us after we had won, after the good guys won. Of which we were obviously the good guys. The United States was fighting fascism, which is bad.
first with like courage and honesty, you just have to applaud. That's why I'm just applaud. I can't wait to find out what you conclude. We want to announce something big that we've been working on for months now. It's a documentary series called Art of the Surge. It's all behind the scene footage shot by an embedded team that has never before seen footage of what it's actually like to run for president if you're Donald Trump. They were there at the Butler Township assassination attempt, for example, and got footage that no one has ever seen before. And it's amazing.
That's kind of cool.
Become a member at TuckerCarlson.com to see this series.
That's actually kind of cool.
Art of the Surge. Where are you, by the way, in this process?
Well, I'm currently working on a series. I'm probably going to do 2 more episodes on it, on the history of the American labor movement. It's not a narrative history of the entire labor movement. I pick certain episodes. I talk about the Battle of Blair Mountain in one episode. Do one on the Haymarket Affair, and
Haymarket.
Really, it's about the industrial wars of like the late 18th century, from Pittsburgh to Chicago and everything.
That's from
I
Haymarket
did one
books.
on this
They named
1968 teachers union strike in New York City that's kind of famous now, the
famous one,
Ocean Hill Brownsville. And that was one that a lot of my research for the Jonestown podcast about the Great Migration of African Americans out of the South came in really handy, because really what it's about is it was a conflict.
I'm gonna be honest. Like, I think this is all that's about world. Are we down the World War II section? Is this like, yeah? So okay. So now we're getting into. We'll listen to a little bit more. He's going to talk about how history is rewritten and propagandized. That sounds pretty interesting. So I do want to listen to that part of it. I don't necessarily know that I want to listen about like Viktor Orban and all that stuff, because this is a long episode and we're only an hour into it. But what I will say is this: I'm going to be honest. I don't understand what all the fuss is about. I really don't. I don't get why people are saying this guy's a Holocaust denialist. Like he didn't deny that anything happened. I don't know why people are saying that Tucker Carlson is woke right for interviewing this guy. This guy actually seems really reasonable, and honestly, like, listening to this guy has motivated me to like to approach stuff that I'm doing in like a little bit of a different way, if I'm honest about it. Like, I really like the way he's describing this stuff, and like, he seems to be very diligent, and he seems to be very pragmatic and nuanced in his approach, and I kind of want to check out his podcast now. I'm not going to lie, even if it involves me listening to a 36-hour podcast about Jonestown. Like, I don't mind this guy. Like, so why is Konstantin Kissing calling this guy the woke right? Why is James Lindsay calling this guy the woke right? Like, what is their issue? Why is Seth Dillon pissed off of the Babylon Bee? Why is Colin Wright calling this guy woke? I mean, this is like an even-keeled, just kind of really down-to-earth conversation. I don't know what the problem is. In
the New York's political system, like, that's centered around a school in Brooklyn, at a time when 75% of the teachers in New York City were Jewish. And New York it's such an interesting city for the fact that it's obviously this multi-ethnic, multicultural city that over the years just is where everybody washed up for the most part on our shores. And from the Irish migrations to the Jewish and Italian migrations and everybody that came after that, there was conflict, and people had to figure out and eventually come to a settlement of like, how are we going to live here together and all feel like we are being represented and so forth. And so you had this city where, again, like today, this sounds almost,
thank you, Fluffy Cow Respecter.
It sounds like a different world in some ways, where the teachers were pretty much all Jews, the transit workers pretty much all Irish. The cops were mostly Irish. The firemen were mostly Irish. Most of the construction trade, the dock workers, things like that, they were all Italians. And everybody it wasn't something like that's what they gravitated to.
Sanitation too, Italian.
Sanitation, yeah. But that was their economic territory. And they had certain neighborhoods that were theirs. And people kind of knew that it's not like a a Jew couldn't move into an Italian neighborhood or vice versa or something. But everybody knew that this was an Italian neighborhood and it was going to stay that way. And they had all kind of come to this settlement in a natural way. Like there was an emergent order that came over the years. And when, and again, there was conflict at every stage of that. After the 1924 immigration law.
So listen. I'm actually open to watching this movie, and I like that it's free. But like, is it in German? Like, am I gonna have to read subtitles? Because that's my only apprehension. Like, is there an option where I can turn? Like, can I make it English? Because I think that movie's in German, right? Am I right about that? Am I making that up? Because it does look like a cool movie. I'm just less than enthused about subtitles, if I'm honest about it.
That essentially cut off European immigration and generally immigration in general. The cheap source of labor that industry turned to were African Americans from the South. And so you saw over the course of about 40 or 50 years, about 6 or 7 million African Americans move out of the rural South to the northern and western cities. And it turned out when they got up there that they had a lot of the same problems that they had previously. But for, various reasons, I think personally, the fact that we were in the post-Second World War period and we were in the middle of a Cold War, that, the process of integrating these people into the system as one of several, because this was a great dream. If you read, what's the book? Nathan Glazer, and it's Beyond the Melting Pot, that he wrote. And I think they wrote that in 1971. And what they predicted in that book was Moynihan and Glazer. That's what it was. And they predicted in that book that, there's a lot of problems right now integrating the African American and Puerto Rican populations into the city. But what we're going to do, like eventually, this has always happened. It's happened in the past. Eventually, it's not going to be black and white like it seems right now. It's going to be Italian and Jewish and Puerto Rican and black. And so they're going to take their place as one of the ethnicities, like in the sort of urban political structure and social structure we have here. And when they looked back on it in I think it was maybe a 2012 edition, they sort of recognized that was obviously a prediction that did not come true. They get into that. And so,
but the teacher strike,
sorry,
of 1968 was like, first of all, it was, at least in my reading of it, one of the pretty rare expressions of mass and open anti-Semitism. There's been anti-Semitism, of course, but like for real.
Seriously?
In American history, and it doesn't seem to be remembered for some reason.
No, it's remembered or misremembered, like right alongside the Crown Heights riot and things like that. Because it's one of those things. Look, I lived for a long time in Los Angeles, right? Used to live in South LA when those were all black neighborhoods down there, and people think back to the Rodney King riots, or when they were watching the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or something, and he would go visit his friends down in Compton, and those were the black neighborhoods down there. Those are not black neighborhoods anymore.
I know.
Those are all Latino neighborhoods, and that transition was not accomplished peacefully. There are good studies and write-ups about this. Hundreds and hundreds of random murders of black people by Mexican gangs, fire bombings of apartment buildings to drive these people out. Right now, you look at something,
drive them east.
That's kind of, if you look at all the big cities in California, even like up in Oakland and stuff, they're all losing their black population.
Yep.
And the great migration out of the South to these cities is actually in reverse right now. And a lot, like net African Americans are moving back to the South. And
or into the Inland Empire, or just like away from the coast.
Yeah. And well, that's right. That's what happens. Like but it's a step-by-step process, right? They get priced out of Oakland and San Francisco, and they move to Stockton and Sacramento, and then those places go up too, and they end up moving, further inland. And that's a process that's been going on for a long time. But like, when you look at what happened in Los Angeles, I mean, again, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of random murders, fire bombings, just not of other gang members or something. I'm not talking about drive-bys of other gang members. I'm talking about just a random black guy.
Race killing.
Yeah, race
killing
killings.
people because of the color of their skin.
And if those people had been, who were doing that were wearing white hoods, they would have called the U.S. Marines in, and for good reason, But it's one of those things that nobody wants to talk about because it doesn't fit neatly into one of our easy political
So that's what
categories.
bothers me about the recording of history. I mean, I think what happens matters, reality matters. And if you find that sort of everything that happens, not just 80 years ago in Dresden, but things that are happening in like LA County 20 years ago,
Yeah.
if they just disappear, in some cases you can't even find them on Google. Like that's a level of manipulation.
You know what? I'm honestly like, okay, let me just throw this idea out there. I had written off the entire conservative establishment, and to a large extent I have. And I'm not even sure I agree with this idea. And Tucker Carlson is obviously like an intelligence asset, and I'm not like saying that. But okay, so like what this is making me want to do, honestly, is like reaching out to Tucker Carlson, being like, bro, I would do it. I would do it much nicer than this. I'd be like, bro, in a very nice way. I watched your interview with that Martyr Maid guy, and I was surprised and delighted at the level of nuance that you got into in terms of controversial historical events. I'm doing this off the top of my head. I'd write it much better than this. And, I know you probably never heard of me, but I've spent the last 4 years researching the radical revolutionary far left in America, and I've documented thousands of hours of their trainings, and I teach this stuff on the internet to, over 100,000 people every single month on my Substack and on my YouTube channel. And the thing is, I believe that a lot of people are lying about what the far left is, and I believe that it's much worse than people think, but I can't get anyone to watch this footage, and I can't get anyone to talk about it. And you seem to be willing to address parts of history and parts of reality that other people aren't willing to address. And so can we talk? Because like I can show you stuff, and it's crazy, and I'm the only one that has it, and I've tried to get people to talk about it. Can we talk? I don't know. Probably would go nowhere. I'm sure it would go nowhere, but maybe I should try that. There's no reason for him to talk to me, obviously. But maybe that would be an interesting experiment, just to see, like, reaching out in good faith, saying, bro, you brought this guy on your channel and he talked about stuff and you got in trouble for that, and, like, maybe, I don't know, I'm sure it would go nowhere.
That's just mind control. That's really scary and
And I
dangerous.
think the propagandists throughout the 20th century, ever since the sort of the rise of mass media, have really understood that that's exactly what it is, especially once it goes on for a generation or two and kids are raised up, and this is what they're being taught, because it forms for them their not just their view of the world, but their view of themselves, like our identities as individuals and our identities that we attach ourselves to collectively are all a result of the stories we tell ourselves.
That's right.
And that we hear as we're growing up. And so if you change those stories, all of those things change as well.
Okay, so that's a perfect segue to something I'm just itching to talk to you about, itching to get your view on. And that leads us back to Churchill. So Churchill's this great hero, defender of the West, savior of the West, the toughest man in world history, the only reason we're not speaking German. And he won the Second World War.
Hey,
Like, that's what, ask
Kazmar!
anybody, that's just a fact.
Thanks for the encouragement,
And yet, if
Kazmar.
I go to his
Appreciate
country,
you.
like
Thank
regularly,
you.
and it's, it doesn't really even exist in any recognized way. It's totally degraded. I try not to go there because it's so depressing. It's just so sad. It's so broken. It's not the country of victors. It's a completely defeated country that's subsequently been invaded. And so how did that happen? Where I go to Japan and it's full of self-respect and order and cleanliness, and like, it doesn't look like it lost. It's like, what is that?
Well, I think we ran an experiment that tells us pretty well what that is. And we didn't know we were running the experiment at the time, but you had the Iron Curtain set up and all the countries behind it that were not exposed to incessant American world order, Western propaganda for 70 years. They don't have these same problems. You go to Hungary, Even a
Yeah.
place like Poland, which obviously the leadership class of any of these countries is, you always have to be suspicious of them because, they
Even
went to-
Romania, which, as you said, suffered more than
Yeah.
most countries.
Yeah. And so, but those countries, like, they don't mind. And again, the tippy top leadership class might be one thing, somebody went to the London School of Economics or something, but like
taking
the people,
NATO money. Yeah.
the people have no problem saying, no, this is a country. This is Hungary. This is a country for Hungarians. This is a Christian country. This is our country. They don't have a problem saying that. That is not something that anybody west of the Iron Curtain, for the most part, is comfortable. It's loosening up a little bit, thank God. But the question is whether it's loosening up too late. You go to a place like Britain, go to a place like Germany. I mean, there's no country on planet Earth that has been subjected to a more pervasive and destructive psychological warfare campaign than Germany over the course of the Cold War. I mean, these people have you really hope that it's not the case, but you wonder if there's
Stockholm
even
syndrome.
the material that would be necessary to construct a psychological defense of their nation, their people. And the lesson that we took from World War II, and again, this wouldn't have been the lesson that any of our soldiers who stormed the beaches in Normandy would have taken or anything like that, but the official kind of court history lesson is that when Europeans start thinking in terms of group, they're very dangerous. And that process needs to be subverted. It needs to be eventually eliminated, like the possibility for that to happen.
I
But
mean,
just-
can we just be honest? This guy obviously knows what's up. And obviously everything he believes is false and fake, and I would never say anything differently, YouTube, but like, this guy obviously knows what's up, right?
Europeans, not Asians or Africans.
Well, I think, well, there's a lot of elements to that. I mean, part of it is the people that were victimized during the Second World War were not victimized by Africans. People were obviously
And
Chinese.
listen, people can complain and say they're trying to hijack the narrative and make it all about Churchill. And there is some validity to that because but I think what people need to understand is sometimes to wake people up, you need to go sideways. You can't go right at something. You need to go sideways and then maybe slink around the back and be a little bit cautious because people get afraid and then they get pissed off and then the cognitive dissonance takes over. So you can't always just go right at a problem. You have to sometimes take different angles to the problem. Hey, Naruto. Naruto says, send positive thoughts. I talked to my grandma for what might be the last time today. She entered hospice today with her body stopped making new blood cells. Hey, Naruto, I'm really sorry to hear that, bro. Sending you love and prayers, sending your grandma love and prayers, but just know that your grandma loves you. I'm sure she said that on the phone, and I'm sure she had a good long life. And I bet that I bet that, like, it's hard. It's always hard, but when people have a good life, it makes it, I think, a little bit easier to remember that people had a good long life. I'm sure she loves you, and I'm sure, but sending thoughts and prayers to you and your family, and just know that she will always be with you. She will always love you. That will never stop. All right? So we love you. We're here for you. We appreciate you. And positive thoughts and prayers.
These people were victimized by the Japanese, but it's a different, China's got a very powerful immune system that kind of preserves them as a culture.
So does Japan.
And so does Japan. And so that's, there's a little bit different.
But from a Western perspective, I think it's fair to say, our leaders make the case implicitly, that it's really only when Europeans have a sense of themselves as Europeans that the world is in peril, but everyone else is fine to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's, they don't see those other people as a threat. Either because the people who formulate these narratives don't live in those places, or they don't have historical experience with those people. And so they don't see them as the same kind of threat.
So Germany is like a totally self-hating place. It's a husk.
Yeah.
It's depressing as hell, though also wonderful in a way, but it's going away. But they lost. At least you could say they lost 2 world wars in a row.
Yeah.
Britain won 2 world wars in a row. And if anything, it's more degraded than Germany. So like,
That's a fair point.
just to take it back to the first thing I said, and I'll shut up and let you answer, but if Churchill is a hero, how come there are British girls begging for drugs on the street of London? And the place is, you know, it's just London is not majority English now. Like, what?
Well, the people who formulated the version of history that considers Churchill a hero, they like London the way it is now, you know?
But that's not victory. That's like the worst kind of defeat, is it not? I'm just confused.
If you're an English person who cares about England, then yeah, absolutely it is. I mean, it's forget about victory and defeat. It's the worst thing that can happen. You know, if you look at what's going on over lately in England, where you're having riots, you're having these, you know, sort of budding violent confrontations between nationalists and the police and so forth, which, you know, I think our natural, we like order, right?
Yeah.
Like Europeans, we like order, and we see things like that, and we have a natural aversion to disorder, to street violence.
Yes,
things
for
like
sure.
that. We might be, you know, war might be necessary, but disorderly mob violence, things like that, like immediately make us kind of take a step back, because most of our experience with those things is really bad. And at the end of the day, like, it is an unleashing of evil spirits, no matter what the cause or the reason is. And yet when I look over there at what the British people, some of them, are trying to do, I refuse to judge them for doing whatever it is that they feel they have to do, as their homeland, their ancient homeland, is being taken from them. Because that is not something that can be walked back. That is permanent. That is something that ends your existence as a people. Like, unless you're going to be like the Jews and, you know, go off into exile and sort of manage to maintain yourself, and even the Jews, they understood that they needed a little spot somewhere on earth that was their special place to develop their culture and to work out their history among themselves as a community of people. And the English people are having that taken from them. You know, the Irish people, Ireland is on track to be minority Irish by like 2070. And you say, okay, hang on, like, A, they never colonized anybody. B, they were colonized and like got the really nasty end of that a lot of the time, you know, suffered a lot. They fought for hundreds of years against brutal British attempts to try to bring them into the British fold and squash that uniqueness, you know, that they had out there. The British couldn't do it. And the British for a while there could do damn near anything.
Yeah.
Okay. And
they spent a lot of time trying to oppress Ireland, a lot.
Yeah. And it was not only that, it was a chief priority for a long time.
Yeah, bring it to heel.
And, you know, we have a bit of a skewed view of the British Empire, just because, and there are a lot of things that are glorious and wonderful about the British Empire, but the United States, like, we don't quite understand, like, the way you know, how bad it was to fall on the wrong side of the empire, because they really treated us with kid gloves during the revolution. You know, we had half a parliament that were on our side.
What they did to the Boers.
Yeah, exactly. That's what, you know, they could have done to us.
They created the concentration camp.
Yes. Yeah. And they ran a lot of them during World War II, actually. You know, that's another thing. It's actually pretty awful is, you know, as soon as the war broke out, Churchill had all of the German and Italian nationals in Great Britain all rounded up and thrown into concentration camps, where they would stay to the end of the war. And this is 1939. And a huge number of those people were Jewish refugees who had come over from Germany to England. They were just rounded up and thrown in camps for 6 years.
Well, he also had the opposition party thrown in prison for the duration. Oswald Mosley and his wife, right after giving birth, you know, spent the duration. People died. That doesn't look like democracy to me.
Are you saying that Zelensky is not running a democracy?
I'm saying if you don't have elections and you're throwing priests in jail, if you're murdering people who disagree with you, as he has, you know, you call whatever. That's like basically a pretty constant form of government throughout history. Yeah. It's fine. I mean, it's like less barbaric than most forms of government actually through history. It's not democracy. Yeah. So please don't lecture me anymore about that.
Well, I mean, we've seen this in the United States, even, obviously a much smaller scale crisis, although maybe not. Maybe it is an existential crisis for the people who are making the decisions. But ever since 2016, where democracy is great, we love democracy, but that's for normal times. It's not for World War II.
Right.
It's not for when we've got insurrections going on. And sometimes, you've got to take extraordinary measures that may not be democratic, but it's to preserve democracy. It's always the excuse, right? It's the excuse of every.
Always. It was
tyrant
Lincoln's
in a way.
excuse.
Yeah.
Exactly. But can I just so what's happened to the UK and Ireland is not accidental. Is there any evidence that the people of those countries whose ancestors have lived there for thousands of years, or the indigenous peoples of those countries, that they wanted this? They wanted to be.
I mean, certainly not the majority of the people who live there, right? Obviously. Like you can go to any Western country, the most just, degraded, cucked country you can possibly find in the West. And the majority of people there don't want any of that happening to them. This is something that has a class element to it. It has, as these countries have become more multi-ethnic and multicultural, it has ethnic, elements to it. It's like there's a lot of things that create a sort of a class of people, and it's a class of people who have most of the influence and power who actually do want these things because they don't identify with the people who are against it on the ground. And this is something that if you see in we've seen in the United States and the West in general, that was budding already. I mean, I would say personally, it goes all the way back to the foundation, but like definitely you see in like the 1960s, if you think of somebody like John Lindsay, right? John Lindsay was the mayor of New York for a while, and he was sort of the quintessential. He didn't grow up like super rich, old money.
He was the last WASP mayor of New York.
He was like that. He was the WASP, right? He was the guy who limousine liberal, the term was invented for, right?
The chin. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at the way he
Limousine
conceived
liberal.
of himself and the way that he, in his class, the people who supported him, the Eastern establishment types and people like him, where they sort of drew their own sense of self-worth and their collective identity was first, we're better than those white people in the South who are protesting Martin Luther King and so forth. We're better than them.
Or the parents in South Boston who don't want busing for their own children.
But then, right. So after the civil rights movement kind of came to a conclusion in 1965, and the Great Migration was starting to create a lot of conflict in the northern cities like New York, that idea, the Southerners are always, they're always there as a foil for northern and Western elite identity construction, but it shifted to these ethnic groups that lived in the cities, the Jews, which sounds strange today that like a WASP mayor who's publicly obsessed with social justice would be against the Jews in a conflict, but he was at the time. And it was because, all these people, the Irish and the Italians, these people who think that like that's their neighborhood because it's been their neighborhood for 100 years now. And it's everybody in the neighborhood goes to a parish church that they've gone to, their grandparents went to. They have internal social structures and dispute arbitration structures and all of these sort of organic institutions that grew up from ground level that gave them an ability to self-govern in a way that made it so they really were not as dependent on the state bureaucracy to do these things for them, right? They could do a lot for themselves. And these are the people who were resisting, the movement of African Americans into their communities. When people look back, for example, like when Martin Luther King went up to Chicago in 1966 and there was the Marquette Park riot, to this day, you have to go into a pretty deep, serious history book about that period to get the fact that everybody sees that as a bunch of white people who came out to protest a bunch of black people moving or trying to open up their neighborhood. But that wasn't a bunch of white people. Those were Lithuanian people. That was a Lithuanian neighborhood that had been a Lithuanian neighborhood for some time. These were a bunch of people who had come over here as refugees and had set up a little community for themselves that they didn't want changed. When that's a Latino community with a bunch of white art students moving into it and gentrifying it in Brooklyn or Los Angeles, people don't have a problem saying that they have a right to maintain this community that they've built for themselves. And I actually kind of agree with that.
Thanks, Chad.
When
We're
I
about
see
to wrap up.
gentrification happening, it's like, I'm sympathetic at the very
I'm
least.
very sympathetic. Yes, the crime thing makes me look. I'm against crime. I'm against hurting people.
Listen, I think we watched enough, and there is still a bit more to this, and I would encourage people to check it out if they feel like it. But like here is my final analysis of this whole thing. I think this is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in my life. Like the fact that this guy's being attacked, and listen, man, I'm not going to say that this guy's right about absolutely everything. I don't know that this guy's right about absolutely everything. I don't know. But, based on what I've seen here today and listening to him talk, he really does seem to take a much more nuanced approach. No DM from the Jewish woman, no. But, like, he takes a nuanced approach. He's digging into books that people haven't read. He's talking about things that people haven't taught. This is not a like dangerous, unhinged neo-Nazi Holocaust denier. Like, I mean, and it is absurd that we're even having this discussion. Conservative Inc. has lost their fucking minds. And I think that people really do need to see this, because the fact that they're attacking this guy is crazy. The fact that they're attacking Tucker Carlson for talking to this guy is crazy. Everyone has overreacted. This was a very polite and civil and nuanced conversations about a lot of events in history. And it's like, bro. And it's like, if they keep doing this stuff, they reveal themselves. They reveal themselves. Every single time they attack for this stuff. We watched an hour and a half of this interview. This is where we are now. It's ridiculous. I'm glad we watched this too, because I was really expecting something much more eventful, if I'm honest. I was like, all right, I'll let the Holocaust denial begin. And I was ready to debunk all of it because, of course, I'm streaming on YouTube and I absolutely believe that no less than 6,000,001 Jews died in the Holocaust. But I was ready to go. I was ready to debunk everything. I was ready to be like, no, Holocaust denialist, you are wrong. And it's like, we just didn't get there because that's not what this was. Well, no, the notion of the woke right is not absurd. The woke right exists. Do you want to know who's on the woke right? Konstantin Kisin and James Lindsay and Gad Saad and Ben Shapiro and everyone at the Daily Wire, to include Jordan Peterson, to include Andrew Klavan. Who else is on the woke right? Seth Dillon and the Babylon Bee is on the woke right. Colin Wright is about the woke right. Every single person that's attacking Tucker Carlson is on the woke right. This is James Lindsay, obviously, is like the king leader of the woke right. This was a completely normal conversation. We are living in the land of retardia. If people think this is, yes, they are really attacking him. Yes. Lisa Logan is on the woke right. Deb Philman is on the woke right. No, Candace Owens is not on the woke right. Candace Owens is insane and a narcissist, but Candace Owens is not on the woke right. Yup, the Mills for Liberty are on the woke right. Dave Rubin is on the woke right. Douglas Murray is on the woke right. Dennis Prager is on the woke right. Olive Prager-U is on the woke right. It's sad, and it's pathetic, and it's absolute lunacy. It's absolute lunacy. And honestly, I want to check out this guy's podcast, because he actually does seem to have some interesting ideas and some interesting perspectives. And I cannot even believe, to compare where we were 4 years ago to where I'm not going to say that the right was open to these conversations then, because they obviously weren't. But like, it's just like, it's so crazy, the environment that these people are creating right now, and they're doing it in the name of righteousness. And James Lindsay really believes that denouncing Tucker Carlson and denouncing this guy is a moral good that he must do for the sake of humanity, because he is saving the world for classical liberal values. And I'm like, did you even listen to the interview? Did you even listen to it? Did you even bother? I cannot believe that this is the state of affairs. I really just can't believe it. I'm so pissed off. Anyway, guys, that's all we got today. Hey, for tomorrow, we will be doing a Bitchcraft call at 3 p.m. Bitchcraft is our once a month Saturday call on at 3 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday, where we bitch and we craft. How do you get access to the Bitchcraft call? Well, I'm glad you asked. You head over to my Substack, which is Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. Now you're gonna have to scroll a little bit, and what you're gonna look for is the Unwoke Roundup newsletter of September 9th. And then scroll all the way down to the bottom, and underneath this red box, you are going to find the link to the Bitchcraft call. I will send out a reminder tomorrow on Substack and Locals, and you can come and join us. I can help you pick out yarn for the MCAL. You know, Judy, I've been thinking about doing the MCAL. I've been thinking about it. I've really been considering it. I know I haven't been knitting lately. I've been slime obsessed lately, but I've been really thinking about doing the MCAL, even though Stephen West is an asshole and he blocked me on Instagram. But I've really been thinking about it because I do enjoy the MCAL, and I feel like Stephen West last year with his behavior around the MCAL destroyed my love of knitting. I blame Stephen West for this. I really do. I feel like Stephen West fucking destroyed my love of knitting. And I do legitimately love knitting, and I want to love knitting again. And maybe sometimes we should forgive and we should move on, but we're going to see. Anyway, guys, join us for Bitchcraft tomorrow at 3 p.m. if you're a supporter on my Substack or my Locals. How you do that is you get onto the Substack and you sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. As a reminder, I am 100% completely grassroots funded by you guys. I do not take money from Conservative Inc. I do not take money from any of these grifting organizations. My only job is to tell you the truth and to show you the receipts. We will also be gathering tomorrow at 6 p.m. on YouTube, on Rumble, on all the different places for Socialism Saturday. We're going to be listening to Everything to Everyone, a talk that Emmy O'Brien gave, which we listened to her talk about this a little bit last week, but Human Centipede found us a great talk that Emmy O'Brien gave about Everything to Everyone, and I have that, and we're going to listen to it tomorrow. And yes, we are going to listen to Naruto's song on the outro. I actually haven't listened to this yet. Naruto gifted us with a song about the woke right. So we're going to listen to that on the outro. And I hope everyone has a good weekend. We made it through another week. I hope I will see some of you tomorrow. Please make sure you mount the like button on the way out the door if you have not already. And I appreciate you guys. And we'll see you soon. Bye.
For freedom, but they silence what's real. Preaching love and justice, tell me how to feel. The flag is wrapped in virtue, but they roll with iron hands. No room for open voices, just their strict demands. They say they're saving truth, but they twist it to their way. Redefining all the rules, so you dare not disobey. Marching to the future, but the past is out of sight. They build their own empire, they are the woke right. They are the woke right. Masking power with a smile, preaching liberty, but they hold the reins all the while. They'll tell you what to say and how you're meant to live. No room for dissent, no more space to give. The woke right, rewriting every law. Say they want your freedom, but control is what they saw. Wrapped it up in virtue, with fire in their fight. But underneath it all, they are the woke right. They promise you're included, as long as you agree. But step outside the narrative and you'll never be free. Preaching all their values, but no compromise in sight. You fall in line, or you get erased by the night. Justice comes in blinders, the truth is narrow still. They shout about equality, but force you up the hill. With banners flying high, they think their path is light, but control is their compass. They are the woke right. They are the woke right. Massing power with a smile, preaching liberty, but they hold the reins all the while. They'll tell you what to say and how you're meant to live. No room for dissent, no more space to give. The woke right, rewriting every law. Say they want your freedom, but control is what they saw. They wrap it up in virtue, with fire in the fight. But underneath it all, they are the woke right. They promise that they're different, but we look just the same. A brand new revolution, but it's all part of the game. Authoritarian faces hiding behind the screen. You can't question the methods, the challenge don't get made. right. Masking power with a smile, preaching liberty, but they hold the reins all the while. They'll tell you what to say and how you're meant to live. No room for dissent, no more space to give. They'll walk right, rewriting every law. Say they want your freedom, but control is what they saw. They wrapped it up in virtue, with fire in the fight, but underneath it all, they are the walk right. Yeah, they are the walk right. They wear the colors roll, but the lines stay strong. To keep the grip is cold. They shout about justice, but the rules are tight. Unvoluntary and to the core, they are the walk right. They promise that they're different, but they look just the same. A brand new revolution, but it's all part of the game. Authoritarian faces hiding behind the screen. You can't question their methods or challenge what they mean.